Okay, we will call the HARC meeting, regular meeting of June 21st, 2023 at 5:30 PM. Rebecca Hall to order. First order of business is to confirm the site walk. The site walk was held at 4 PM on June 21st today at 221 West Colorado Avenue. And during the site walk, we only had discussions that related to the orientation of the site, the physical characteristics of the site, and the layout of the site. Present at the site walk were Mark Shambaugh, Kieran Lannon, Matt Lee, Stacy Lake, Bob Mather, Chris Papar, Andrew Williamson, Tana Wenzel, and Eric Jensen, and some members of the public. With that, those of you who are joining virtually, the meeting ID tonight is 892-8179-5500. Passcode is 16444. If you're on the phone, which is, you can reach us at 301-715-8592. Okay, just as a reminder, I think it's the longest day of the year and we might have a short meeting. We don't need, just because it's the longest day of the year, we don't have to have the longest meeting of the year. But so we may have time for this, but I think it's important to review. Our purpose is to preserve, maintain, and enhance the historic character, scale, architectural integrity, and cultural resources of the town and the Telluride Historic Landmark District. Great. So we will do our roll call in a second, but let's see who we have from town council. I don't see anybody yet. From staff, we have Piper, Erica, Jonna, and Ron.
And Allie.
And Allie. And we'll do our roll call.
Kieran Lannon, Stacy Lake, Matt Lee,
Mark Shambaugh.
Bob Mather,
Christine Perpar.
Andrew Williamson.
Full house. Okay. Do we have a motion for approval of the joint Park PNC meeting of April 27th?
I move to approve the joint HARC and PNZ meeting minutes as presented.
I will second.
Okay.
Kieran, yes.
Stacy, yes. Matt, yes.
Mark, yes.
Bob, yes.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve the HARC meeting minutes of May 17th?
I move to approve the HARC meeting minutes dated May 17th, 2023.
Matt will second.
Okay. Kieran,
Kieran, yes.
Stacy, yes. Matt, yes.
Mark, yes.
Bob, yes.
Recording in progress.
And for the HARC chairperson meeting of May 19th, Stacy took my place. And Stacy, do you want to make a motion to approve them?
Yeah, I move to approve the meeting minutes for the park chair meeting. Sorry, what was the date?
May 19th.
May 19th.
Staff announcements, Jonna.
Just a reminder that we are accepting nominations for the 2023 HARC Preservation Awards. Friday is the deadline. We haven't received any yet. So if anyone's listening or thinks they may want to submit a nomination, time is running short. So the deadline is 4 PM this Friday, and HARC will review them at your meeting in July, assuming we get some nominations.
Do you have some for each category?
We haven't received any yet.
Oh, so we need to do something.
It's been on social media and the website, and we emailed our regular applicants. So maybe everybody's waiting.
I'm trying to get two
It's
in.
typical that we usually
Yes.
get them at the last minute. So I'm optimistic that we will get some, but we don't have any yet.
Okay.
So if you're thinking about it, you should submit. Yeah. Okay. I'm trying. And that's all the announcements I have tonight. I have the slide ready to
Okay.
show of the HARC's public hearing process.
Okay.
Like,
While you're putting that up, just, I see from council, we have Jesse Ray just joined us. Welcome. Thank you. Also, one other kind of announcement that Matt and Bob and I are going to start the process now. Hopefully we're done with the land use code changes and looking at the guidelines and then getting with Jonna. And so we'll be back to you. Hopefully we'll meet in July and have something to say soon. Just leave it. How's that for being vague? All right. Just as a reminder, The purpose of our HARC process is, or the hearing process, excuse me, not the purpose, but the rules are the HARC chair will introduce the project. Staff will then give a presentation, answer the HARC questions. Applicant will give their presentation. We ask it to be 30 minutes or less, please. The public will be invited to make comments on the specific project, 3 minutes or less per person. And no dialogue is allowed between the public, the applicants, and HARC members. The applicant may address any comments made by the public, and then the public comment ends. The applicant may rebut any comments made by the public, and HARC members then will deliberate and vote. Okay. I think we'll go ahead with the first public hearing item. The Phoenix Market Employee Housing and Hotel Accommodations. It's consideration of a preliminary large-scale application for the addition to an existing building in the historic commercial zone district, which will increase the structure's floor area by more than 25% and result in a building that contains more than 5,000 square feet of floor area pursuant to Land Use Code 7203A2A2. Legal description, Block 3, Lot 29. It's at 221 West Colorado. As stated, it was the historic commercial zone district. Owner, New Sheridan Restaurants LLC. Applicant, Sherry Harvey Architecture, and staff member, John Wenzel.
Thank you, Chairperson Shamba. This is an application for an addition at 221 West Colorado Avenue. It is for the Phoenix Market preliminary large-scale HARC review, so we will see this again at the final review. As you mentioned, we held a site walk there this afternoon. And talked about the orientation and site context. So regarding the site, the Phoenix Market, as it's called historically, is on the north side of Main Street, adjacent to the New Sheridan Hotel, and is rated contributing. In your packet is a letter from the Colorado Historical Foundation, which holds a facade easement on the New Sheridan Hotel facade. And they were asked to provide comment on any potential impacts of this project on the hotel. And we haven't received any other public comment in writing. This block of Colorado Avenue contains the highest concentration of contributing structures and local landmarks on Main Street. So the courthouse is just across the Oak Street Park. The New Sheridan, I mentioned, the hotel and the bar, and then the Nugget building is on the corner just to the east. This building, the Phoenix Market, is rated contributing, as I mentioned. It was built around 1893 as a small grocery store, and then it was expanded slightly a couple of years later and was a grocery and meat market. The last edition appears to have been built before 1922. We've known this building more recently as the Steaming Bean, the Phoenix Bean, and now as the Telluride Angler and Telluride Outside Shop. So this proposal is to construct a rear addition to the historic building that will contain 3 hotel units. 1 at ground level and then 2 in the 2 stories above, 2 affordable housing units, 1 below and 1 above the Telluride Outside Shop, and 2 on-site covered parking spaces off of the alley. HARC may recall doing the review and recommendation for this PUD last fall. A PUD for this project was approved by P&Z in September of last year, which permits the maximum height to be up to 39.5 feet. It allows a reduction of the required parking for the hotel units. And it allows the addition to cross the property line it shares with the New Sheridan Hotel. When we were on site, Sherry talked about the elevator, which will access those hotel units and affordable housing units, and the access from Main Street and stairs. Those are on the other side of the property line. That has all been approved via the PUD and an agreement. So that's okay. So the benefits provided for this PUD requests were to provide 3 hotel units, 2 on-site affordable housing units, the 2 on-site parking spots for the affordable housing units, and the preservation of the historic roof form of the Phoenix Market Building. Again, the addition is just at the rear. It doesn't affect the historic roof or building form of the historic building. So staff finds that the proposal is substantially compliant with the design guidelines and is recommending approval of the preliminary application with a few conditions. As I mentioned, HARC will see this again at the final review. I guess of the greatest concern of these conditions is the stepping down to the alley, which is partly achieved on the north facade, but still proposes a 3-story facade at the alley when looking down the alley to the east. You can see in the renderings that are provided in the packet, a portion of the north facade does step down to the alley from the 3rd to the 2nd level. And looking to the west, I think perhaps, the stepping down is maybe adequate. Looking to the east, as I mentioned, it really is a 3-story facade at the minimum rear setback of 5 feet. So I'm sure the applicant will discuss this with you. And at this time, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have for me.
John, your condition number 2 says increase the stepping down at the alley to the 2nd level. Do you mean the 3rd level or the 2nd?
I guess I should say to the
Third.
2nd level.
To the.
Yeah.
Do the alley shed and secondary structures guidelines apply? The AS section?
It's not a separate structure. It's not a separate alley structure, but the stepping down sure does.
Okay, well, alley, it's the alley.
The alley context.
Yeah.
Yes.
You didn't put it as a condition, but just wanted to ask, I think it's respectful with the height drop down to the Sheridan, which is good as we saw, although it thought we heard on site it was 1 foot down, but it looks like it's almost 3 foot lower here, but did you have any concern about being 4 foot higher than the bell as far as context?
Well, I think that it adequately steps down to the bell. I mean, the Sheridan is a bit higher, this is a bit lower, and the bell is a bit lower. So I feel like it fits in with the height context of that block from the alley side. And I will say, I do appreciate that this addition is so far set back from Colorado Avenue. I think that was a very sensitive attempt at a rather tall addition.
Agreed. Okay. Let's hear from the applicant. Welcome. Thank you.
I thought I would start by running through a brief synopsis of the historical significance of the Phoenix Market Building and its past. From the Sanborn maps dated in 1890, you can see the context of the block and the rear additions, as Jonna pointed out, that were added by 1893. You can also see in the 1890 map is that where the Sheridan Opera House is today, a building was built right on the lot line. And the same with the Ranta shop at that point was also built on the lot line. By 1893, behind what we now know as the Bell Building, there were 2 outbuildings, and the rear building is also on the lot line. So that is continued in 1900s. The Ranta building is now more established on the lot line. The Bell Building rear structure is also on the lot line, and the Opera House original building goes away, and the Sheridan extends back to the lot line. And you can see this again by 1904 establishes this is a very dense block, and there must have been a lot of activity going on during the period of maintenance. there to go in 1908 with the amount of buildings back to towards the alley. These drawings, these were sketches by Michael McAllister from the application a while ago that show the historical portion of the building that has been preserved. So in this design, we had a lot of challenges with being a hotel and means of egress, and preserving the storefront was one of the criteria that we thought was important. A lot of other buildings not only build on top of it, but they create a private entrance within the original storefront. So we've preserved that by just having one door into the mercantile space, and we have not broken that up at all. So here you can see a view looking southwest in 1891. You can see here the courthouse, the Nugget, and you can see these alley buildings going all the way to the lot line behind the Bell Building. And the Phoenix Market Building is tucked in here. So here we are in 1914 at the historic Hornet Creek flood and the amount of debris that came through the new Sheridan. You can see this little corridor here, which we're going to use as our entrance, had a little bit of advertising in it. And the point of these slides is to show that this view, which is the iconic view of Telluride, is going to remain completely unchanged. It is only when you're standing across the street and looking straight on that you see the store. Another one borrowed from this Telluride Historical Museum of the flood and the context of the block. We ended up losing this small building where the HARC Telluride is. There it is as a Phoenix meat market. And in the 1930s, that HARC Telluride building is gone. So this is a drawing by George Greenbank of the existing building before the renovation in 2016. And this shows it was really in poor condition. The roof had a sag in it, and the amount of debris that had built up in the alley was extreme. So the back of this building was really in great need of some restoration. At this point, I'm going to pass it over to Ray to discuss the context of that renovation.
Thanks, Sherry. I'm Ray Farnsworth. Good evening. I'd like to talk a little bit about the history of this building and our plans for the future. 221 West Colorado Avenue was originally built by electricity tycoon and philanthropist L.L. Nunn in 1892. In its early days, it housed the Phoenix Market, which provided meat, fish, vegetables, and other necessities to the early miners and residents of Telluride. Nearly 125 years later, the calamities brought by the harsh weather had taken their toll, and the building was near collapse. We purchased the building in 2015 and embarked on a difficult and costly remodel, which took over 18 months to complete. Chris Prepar was the architect and remembers vividly. The top and bottom floors were stabilized so we could begin work without the place falling down. We removed historic bricks and tin ceiling pieces one by one, numbered them, and carefully stored them. 2 steel beams running the length of the building were installed to support the structure, while we laid a foundation and connected the historic walls to it. The gabled roof was temporarily removed and the trusses were reinforced. Concrete walls were created along the back and sides of the property to act as a barrier against flood and double as future foundation walls. We reapplied the original brick and beautiful tin ceilings and completed this grueling remodel in December of 2016. We're very proud of our efforts at saving this important contributing structure for future generations to admire. We operated our remodeled building at 221 West Colorado Avenue as a cafe for a few years, and last year signed a long-term lease with the team at Telluride Outside. Now we endeavor to complete the evolution of this important property by creating critical public benefits, employee housing, and nightly hotel rentals. And we're excited to meet with you this evening to discuss this exceptional project.
Thank you.
So from Main Street, once again, that setback to the main facade is 74 feet, 7 3/4 inches. And to this stairwell here to the neighbor is 60 feet, 4 inches. So knowing very well from all my experience, the National Park Service's standards for preservation, not building on top of this historic structure, its context of being a small building surrounded by large buildings were paramount. As well as when you only have 2 facades and you build on the back of it, you're obviously losing half of the context of the building. So by doing that, we feel that that was the most important part of this project, but it did lead to pushing some of the mass towards the alley. And I know you can see there's quite a few drawings there, but on drawing A 4.0, there's some square footages of all of the different spaces of the project. And there's literally almost 2,000 square feet of egress space and only 2,300 square feet of hotel space. So that's a really tight ratio. So we are asking you to consider not only all of those aspects of preservation that I just listed, but the fact that this building does not go lot line to lot line in the back. It's not 25 foot wide. It is a 19 foot wide building with the start of one setback on the east northeast corner. So to provide some variety, but it is, we feel with the materials being brick and the shapes of the windows and the cornice to match the Sheridan, it is under the same operating agreement as the Sheridan. It is not a private condo. We think those are all important things in your decision-making tonight. I could go on again about the space behind the historic building and to the Sheridan and the leftover space of only being 19 by 32 feet and the amount of time that we have put into making the best plan to make this project feasible. I do have another few slides if you wanted to discuss the impact of building onto the alley and other commercial projects we have built on top of historic contributing buildings, if you wanted to see them. So if that is something that you feel is worthy of more discussion, I can do that, but I don't want to take up your time. And lastly, I guess with Cindy Naski's letter, she reinforced her support behind this as being contextual with the Sheridan Hotel. And yep, please ask us any questions before you close for deliberation that I might not have hit on in our presentation. I'm going to pass it back to Ray.
I know there's a couple of neighbors here tonight, and I appreciate your coming that aren't in support of our project, and I respect that. I did want to just mention that we do have neighbors that are in support, including Diane Max, who lives in the former Oak Street Inn building, and Stuart Seligson, who's one of the owners next door at the Bell Building. So we think it's a sound project, a relatively modest project, and we worked really hard to make the best building possible and to offer important public benefit. And we'd love to hear your feedback.
Questions? I'll turn this into a question before we lose you, as you both know. So I think we all appreciate, as John pointed out, that the setback of 74 feet and 60 feet there. And I don't know, unless the board wants to see other commercial buildings, we know of some mistakes of people, stacking things up. It didn't have that kind of setback. But the Bell Building has significant setback in this distance. So the dilemma is pushing the mass to the back that you fought with versus, having it further forward. But I've turned into a question of, I've studied it and I've looked at the program. In what ways could you creatively offer more compliance to John's condition number 2. I mean, you've got 2-foot step back with an angle. There's an attempt. In what ways could you further comply with that on a further step back on the 3rd floor?
Well, I would struggle with that because of building codes. I need to maintain 6-foot distance from the Phoenix market. I think that when I recited those square footages of the numbers we have, it's a really fine line of the amount of circulation space to the amount of actual usable space that the Sheridan will be able to turn into hotel rooms. So but by being 19-foot wide and not being a full 25, it would be detrimental. It would probably lose a bedroom if we had to continue to push that back. And I mean, at some point you have to ask, is it worth it? And should we just build on top of the building? Like, like the Shanghai building, should we just not have such a large setback from Main Street, build on top of the building, take all of that circulation space and make it interior and, make it much smaller? And is that against the National Park Service standards for preservation in terms of context?
Okay, that'll be point of deliberation. That's just why I asked. And are you mandated to have both stairs as well as the elevator?
No, the elevator is a luxury.
Yeah.
The elevator is so
Yeah.
people not to carry their luggage up.
It's more regress.
Mark, before we lose the opportunity, may I say a couple additional things? Thank you. Historic preservation is important to us, as is evidenced by a responsible stewardship of the New Sheridan Hotel, one of the most important historic landmarks in Telluride, and also with the contributing structure known as the Phoenix Market. This project is modest and respectful contextually to the site and to our neighbors. It will provide deed restricted employee housing in perpetuity and much needed hotbeds. And again, once again, we ask for your support of this project and the critical public benefits it will provide. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Okay, no more questions? Move on. Okay, we'll hear from the public and you can come up one at a time or electronically raise your hand, which actually we have.
I've got Jessie Ray has her hand raised and Paul Steinberg.
Okay, well, we'll go ahead and hear from Jessie Ray first, and then we'll get the electronic version, and then other people can come up. So let's go ahead, Jessie. Unmute yourself.
I think that my hand was raised accidentally. I'm sorry, you guys.
Oh. Oh, hello, anyway. Okay. And then there was Paul Steinberg. Paul, do you want to?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, hi. I just wanted to follow up with what Ray was saying there and Sherry. And that I just wanted to be very specific and say that we are asking you to reconsider condition 2. We think that we've done our best to preserve the existing structure by setting it back towards as far back in the alley as possible. And we hope that you can reward our thoughtful approach and modest proposed structure here.
Thank you. And I don't see anybody else electronically. Does anybody in the public here want to come up and speak? Ladies first. Okay, and if you would cite your name first so that we can get it on the record. And we appreciate you staying within the 3-minute guideline.
My name is Vicki Ramsey-Heidslow, and I own the shop building. And first of all, I'd like to say I really appreciate the step back from Main Street. That I think really makes a difference. I am concerned. I would like to see more of a setback on the 3rd level of the building. And I know this is a moot point because it's already happened, but I do worry about the 2 parking spots. Just because of how crowded that alley gets over the winter.
Thank you. Someone else?
Yeah, that would be me. I'm Kevin Croak. I'm probably most affected by this project. as anybody, as I live directly across from the Sheridan. I want to say first that Ray and the Sheridan have always been really good neighbors to me and Ray's a personal friend. And I hate to be in this position, but this, I think your job is to consider the historical appearance of this town. And I think when you approve projects that step straight up from the alley where there was nothing there before is chipping away at the historical value of this town. And that bothers me a lot. I've been here 34 years. I've been behind that Sheridan and I worked as a contractor here for 34 years and mass and scale. I've been before HARC. I can't tell you how many times, but every time it was mass and scale. And the mass and scale of this project bothers me in that it's just this a very large building, very tall, right against the alley. Creates it'll create more havoc for the street people in creating a shadow in the wintertime. That ice doesn't melt out of there. And this will just make that worse. As far as parking, the Sheridan Hotel has maybe, I would guess 30 employees. To have 2 employee units, and hopefully there are employee units, but to have 3 more units just increases the parking aspects of this town. There is no parking. There are 2 parking places for the Sheridan Hotel. So do the math. It's, if you look down the alley, every other building down there steps back. I actually worked with Vicky and Ivor. I built that building. And if you look at the one adjacent to the rental building, I guess we call it. And
Could you summarize at the end? That's the
I'll
3
give 1
minutes.
minute. Okay. Anyway, I'm summarizing. Yes, I think that the building's too tall. Puts too much shade on the alley. Doesn't allow enough parking. It needs to step back a little bit at the top on the back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, does the applicant want a chance to comment, read and summarize?
Yes, please.
I can both of those through. I would just say that it does try to allow some restoration of the facade by not enclosing it completely. We're not proposing garage doors that would come all the way down, and that would be a true 3-story building onto the alley. And I do think that it matches the context that Donna said when we were looking to the upper house. And seeing this as an extension of the Sheridan was the whole premise of this project. You know, Ray's got more to say about this.
And, you know, I respectfully disagree with my friend and neighbor, Kevin Krogh. I think that the Sanborn map photos that Sherry showed at the beginning of our presentation show that historically there has been lots of building to the alley, and that our project is appropriate and contextually matches the rest of the alley with the Opera House and the new Sheridan Hotel. And the only other point I'd like to make is that I have over 100 employees, 120 or so. And we try to find housing because it's become brutal to employ people and keep our doors open, and it's harder and harder. I think all of you know we're involved in another project down the road where we're deed restricting employee housing in perpetuity, and we're trying to take the bull by the horn and build some additional employee housing because we drastically need it. And the parking spaces, that Vicky mentioned concern about, I understand, her concern, but these are employee housing units, where my employees sign a lease with me that they have to work full-time in order to qualify. And my point is that, I don't expect tons of activity or additional activity in that alley from the 2 additional parking spaces. You know, they're employees and working hard, and I disagree that it's gonna create a log jam or problems in that alley. Thanks.
Do you want to see the other examples or?
I think anything to help build your case for the alley would help.
So this project, it was on a contributing building and it actually merged 2 storefronts. It had much less of a setback from Main Street. That was, you can see it in plan. It also did what we were trying to not do in terms of create a separate entrance to the storefront. That was the section there. That's the addition on top of the historic building, which you can see from Main Street. But the impact of this onto this alley is a lot. The historic building around it is smaller, and the historic building to the right is set much further back. So I think that this is one example. I also have the Bell Building drawings, which we approved, which also proposes to build on top. And we've tried to be compatible with in terms of our window openings and step down to this project, which you will be able to see from Main Street. And so in terms of other projects, I'm not going to go through it.
It's modest.
Yeah, it's not, it's giving up a lot and for preservation, with a very selfless ask for hotel suites versus. So this was the Michael McAllister proposal back, a while ago, but it still had approval at that time to break up that storefront. So once again, just going back to the standards for preservation, we understand that we are creating some impact to the alley, but fortunately Kevin's house faces Oak Street and it's a secondary building that this would impact. I think those are all of the aspects that went into this.
All right, thank you. Okay. Let's start deliberations, and I guess we'd make your comments if you concur with 1, 2, and 3 as recommended by staff, and or any additional ones or any other take on those 3. Who would like to go first?
I'll go first. First of all, I applaud your effort just to not build over the top of the Phoenix building. That level of preservation is deserving, of our thanks as a board. But that doesn't necessarily relieve you then of the responsibilities you have to the alley, which for me are, and we hammered on the Shanghai building. If it weren't for HARC's effort, that building would have been taller and more proud to the alley than it is. We hammered away at that, I wasn't on HARC at the time, but HARC at the time hammered away at that building, and the result, the result is what the result is. I appreciate on the northeast corner, this step back from the 2nd to the 3rd level. I, in a way, can understand why you don't follow, why you don't carry that step back across the facade. It provides some relief on the facade, which there's a guideline that speaks to that. And I can also understand why there is the corner of the Sheridan building runs straight up at the corner. And so I think those two being adjacent contextually, I could wrap my head around that corner going all the way up. I think it's a lot less it wouldn't be as much of an impact as it is if those other lots, the Bell Building and the other lots to the east were infilled, and they will be. I think the entire Main Street commercial zone district is going to experience infill as our town continues to fill in. So I'm supportive of number 2, but I can understand the rationale. It's not, for me, it's not a trade-off. It's not something you gain for your effort on the Colorado side or on the southern side. I think contextually, it's simply a Main Street alley that is going to fill in as other projects come online. There, is that good enough?
I'd say I generally agree with Stacy. I support this project. I appreciate the affordable housing. I think, to me, I'm looking at the drawings and the plan of the third level, and if you got rid of the 2-story facade that's on the second and third level, and that sort of roof continued over, you were talking about 2 feet. It's like you'd lose a sink, or maybe the shower gets smaller, and that would step down the third level. And I'm wondering, is that might be enough, or does that wall want to come back another foot? I think it's as simple as that. I appreciate everything else about the project. I just think that corner's massing needs to come down.
I agree.
Agreed.
I agree with Matt. And I think regarding item 2, I think as you heard, it's just a slight setback of some sort from that 3-story mass.
Be really specific, so I know what you're talking about.
Did you put up A51? Look at it, that's what we're talking about. Cool. There's no other conditions we're gonna talk about, right?
I don't have any.
Okay, okay.
No.
So I think we concur, we're gonna see it again. So it's always the dilemma, the degree of specificity, so we don't waste their time to give them feedback. We talking 24 more inches? Are we talking 4 feet or whatever? I would just like to say that we don't want to prescribe the solution. But I did have a question, I saw the 2 feet in the bathroom that could by itself take care of this if it was only to be 2 feet on that northeast corner. And then I looked at the layout of furniture and stuff, and I saw another feet, but I didn't know if that 6 feet needed, and maybe architecturally, one of you guys know. Does it need
separation between the?
Well, I mean, it's a separation, but could it be 4 feet? I mean, could they gain something on it? No. Okay, it needs to be 6 for some reason. Okay.
If I think probably the 2 feet is enough. I think if they just went 2 feet off of the grid line F, just continue that wall. I mean, for me personally, I think that would.
It'll break the corner.
Yeah, and I don't think that, I think that facade can be that simple. I don't think we need more complexity back there. You sort of alluded to that.
Okay, I'd like to just kind of take a straw poll. We got one for 2 feet. I originally drew it at, since part of it was 2 feet back, that the whole thing needed to be 6 feet back, or 4 more feet on one side, but who concurs with 2 feet? I'm gonna throw out, I think it should be a minimum of 4. And I think it can be very programmatically be very simple. Just to take a little bit out of the living room furniture, not lose any rooms. And as you pointed out, I did the calculation too, just rotate the sink and a smaller shower. But we're not trying to prescribe the solution, but I think it should be a minimum of 4 feet for this tall of a structure on a somewhat narrow alley. We're gonna do a straw poll. So 2 feet.
I'm more on board with 2.
Just see it 2. If it's enough, then that's great. And if it doesn't seem like it's enough, we can go back at that point.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm with you.
I'm good.
I agree.
Okay, since we're gonna see it again, I'll concede and forget my straw poll. Since I seem to be the lone.
No, don't forget it.
We did it.
We did it.
Well, I felt like the lone, with all due respect, but, okay, well then, they've heard us. Do we, in the motion, whoever's gonna make it, and I think we should say setback the finale at the third level down to the second, just for clarification, but Are we going to say just on F line and the northeast corner, or what are we,
I
are we
would,
going with the 2 foot they have now and then just carrying it across the building from?
I
east to
think,
west?
I think they've heard us, and if they have other ways to massage things.
Okay.
I wouldn't want to be that person, yeah.
Okay, so we'll just
Prescriptive.
kind of leave it as is, except for maybe revise to the
Two.
step back third to second floor. Okay, no other deliberations? Okay, so we're gonna approve this, we're gonna see it again, and we'll take a real good look at it and see what they've come up with. Okay, who wants to make motion?
I'll make the motion. I move to approve the preliminary large-scale application for the addition to an existing building at 221 West Colorado Avenue, Block 3, Lot 29, Town of Telluride, based on the findings in the staff memo dated June 21st, 2023. And with the following conditions: number 1, as stated; number 2, increase the stepping down to the alley. Sorry, let me start over again. Increase the stepping down to the alley to the second level, consistent with MS 8A2, MS 22B, MS 22B1, and MS 22B2. Number 3, as indicated, this motion is based on evidence and testimony provided at a public hearing held on June 21st, 2023, with notice of such hearing provided as required by the Telluride Land Use Code.
Aaron will second.
Okay, Kenyon,
Yes.
Stacy, yes.
Matt, yes.
Mark, yes.
Bob, yes.
Okay, it's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you, good luck.
It was great to be part of this all female applicant night, by the way. You haven't noticed.
Yes.
That's actually a first. Good. Good.
All females. represented.
Okay,
True, there was where you were the only applicant. I remember.
all right, we're gonna move on. We're gonna move on to the second and final public hearing item. It's 577 West Columbia, Lot BR. Consideration of small scale new construction in a residential zone district, which will contain more than 2,500 square foot area. Or land use code 7203B1 and A1 and B insubstantial scale new construction in the residential zone district, which will contain 950 square foot or less. Per 7203B1 C1. Legal description is lot BR Block 10 West Telluride Edition at 577 West Columbia. It's in the residential zone district. Owner 577 Telluride LLC. Applicant Stephanie Halpin and Chris Babar. Staff member Erica Jensen.
I need to recuse myself.
Yes.
Into the microphone.
Did you hear it?
No, not at all.
Okay, all right, this is the final small scale review at 577 West Columbia. Public comment was received from Eileen and Richard Barth and Cornet Falls subdivision HOA. Did everyone have time to review those public comments?
Yes.
Great. Okay, this project is located in the residential zone district and the east-west Telluride treatment area, as well as the River Park Corridor overlay, which means special care needs to be given to certain aspects of the project regarding light spill and the wetlands. It is located outside the historic district, but it is directly adjacent and has many rated structures in the vicinity. The proposal is for new construction of a 3,914 square foot primary structure and the new construction of a 378 square foot garage. Now, there are 27 proposed conditions in the staff memo. I'm not going to go over every condition, but after my presentation, I'm happy to answer any questions about conditions that members of HARC may have. So many of the conditions refer to guidelines based around mass and scale. The Davis Street facade is around 55 feet in length with no substantial break in the facade or substantial break in the ridge line. This long of a facade and ridge line does not relate to the historic mass and scale of Telluride. The building also does not step down to the street, which just detracts from the pedestrian experience. There is also a retaining wall on the Davis Street frontage that is around 5 feet tall and over 65 feet in length. This tall and long a retaining wall is out of scale for the neighborhood. The guidelines speak to retaining walls being no taller than 30 inches. Many of the conditions refer to glazing and doors on both the primary and secondary structure. Both structures contain a variety of different types and styles of windows, many that are untraditionally tall and skinny. There does not seem to be a traditional window to wall ratio, and the large areas of glass on the doors create inappropriate large surfaces of glass, especially as the house faces the creek. The windows on a project abutting the historic district should have a more traditional placement, grouping, size, and less expanses of glass. There are also a large number of doors on the project, many of which face the creek and cause concerns over light spill. The guidelines speak to maintaining forms traditional to what was historically found in Telluride. The large rectangular stone forms are not traditional building components and are of a size that the perceived scale of the building is increased. The front entry porch is not of a size to function as more than an entry landing and does not have a roof over the entry, but rather a deck. And the entry off Davis Street functions as a main entrance and should be revised to look like a secondary entrance. Lastly, the 412 slope on the east side of the main gable is very shallow and does not maintain a historic pitch. The guidelines speak to having at least an 812 pitch. Setbacks. The applicant is asking for a reduction in both side yard setbacks as well as the rear setback. Since this is a corner lot, the required setback is normally 15 feet and the proposed is 7.2. On the east property line, the required setback would be 7, but the proposed is 3.8. And the rear setback is normally 15, but the proposed is 5.2. While there are site constraints due to the creek, it is atypical to see a proposal for reduction in 3 out of 4 setbacks, and all 3 are pretty large reductions. These large reductions in setbacks do not maintain the historic pattern and rhythm of rear and side yard spacing. Lastly, as stated in the HARC memo, staff feels HARC should discuss the east side yard setback and the secondary structure. Normally, the side yard setback for a lot of this frontage would be 7 feet, and the applicant is asking for a reduction to 3.8. The land use code does allow HARC to reduce this to no less than 3 feet, provided HARC determines that important resources or site features are being preserved, and that reducing the setback results in an overall development plan that is in greater compliance with the review criteria. While reducing the side yard setback to 3 feet allows for the secondary structure to be built in the proposed location, it also requires an 80% reduction in the wetland setback to the 5-foot absolute setback. It does not appear that reducing both the side yard setback and the wetland setbacks create a development plan that is in greater compliance. I have not made a condition regarding this setback, but I feel that you should discuss it to deem if it's appropriate or not. And then lastly, Cornet Creek flows directly through this lot, meaning the River Park Corridor overlay design standards apply. There are concerns about the glazing, mainly in the doors and the light spill facing the creek. And then there are also concerns about the secondary structure setbacks, as discussed in the previous slide, and also how close the deck and hot tub are to the wetlands. Since writing the memo, staff did notice that condition number 4 and 6 need to be revised as there was a misunderstanding of the plans. At the northeast corner, the form does step down so that there is it is subordinate to larger gable forms. So condition 4 can be struck. There still does seem to be a number of intersecting forms on the northern roof form that create a complicated appearance that is not sympathetic to the traditional simpler forms of Telluride. So condition 6 should be revised to say, revise the roof to contain simpler intersecting forms.
Take out northeast area.
Yeah. So listed here are the 27 conditions. Because of the number of conditions and the large amount of conditions regarding mass and scale, staff is recommending that this project be continued to the August 16th HARC meeting. And I'm happy to answer any questions about specific conditions or the project before we hear from the applicant.
Questions?
I was wondering, Eric,
Yeah.
could you elaborate a little bit on the typical wetland setback of 25 feet and the sort of ability to reduce it to 5 feet? Do you have any sort of background, or can you elaborate a little bit more on, when is that allowed? And
So, excuse me, it's in the staff analysis and recommendation. So if HARC determines that the setbacks are appropriate, the planning director approves the wetland setbacks administratively based on the criteria listed in the staff analysis or recommendation. So we as HARC staff, not planning staff, don't really have a lot to do with that process. Ron would be more involved with that.
Okay.
It just seemed that reducing it to the 5-foot absolute setback, but then also reducing the east side yard setback wasn't really maintaining important site features.
But I mean, over the years, as you've seen, you look at the wetlands and the request to change the setbacks in parallel with can you build a reasonable structure and, you know, I mean, it kind of comes down to the square footage, I guess, because you could build anything in there that would exactly comply. So we have to just discuss that and see where we go from there, but other questions? I guess on the rear setback, 15 feet. They're requesting 5. Did you have as much concern on the rear with regard and because of wetlands as you did on the sides, east side and west?
The rear,
North?
let me pull up the plans.
So it's just 15 and they're asking for 5'2" and
So the rear doesn't face the wetlands. So there
So there's-
wasn't quite a concern about the rear regarding the wetlands, but a 5'2" rear setback is pretty minimal. I've never seen such a small rear setback. So I think condition 8 speaks to that.
yeah. And you don't want to necessarily give us any input on the word closer. You want us to deliberate that?
I think that is for
I'm
you to
giving you a chance to
deliberate.
say we should deliberate. that.
I
Okay,
think yes.
all right, that's what we'll do. That's why we get paid the big bucks. Well, or why we just got a raise, I guess. Okay, we didn't ask for it, for the record. Where are we? No questions. Okay, then we're gonna hear from the applicant. Oh, and I would only say to the applicant that the continuation suggestion is, I believe, what's gonna happen here with 27 conditions. But we also have a local architect who's been here, done this, and has a track record of normally coming back compliant. So I would suggest you go over whatever conditions you want, but mass and scale for sure. But I'd encourage you not to necessarily go over all 27.
No. Okay, Chris Parr, Shift Architects. These are my clients and neighbors, actually in 2 directions. Ricardo and Stephanie. I'm just here to help them through our very easy process. So we're going to take your suggestion. We are in agreement with the continuance. And we're not going to hit all of these because all but 6 of them would like to discuss and get feedback and are in agreement with staff's recommendations. So we have gone through those and already have solutions for the August submittal. This is Stephanie. So we first would like to discuss all the setback.
Hi, Stephanie Hansen. First of all, thank you. And you are been working with us for a long time in this project. We're super excited. First one is, as Chris mentioned, is the setback. So sorry this coming up right now. I'll give you a little bit of a history of the lot so you understand why it's hard to figure out exactly what the rear, the front, and because it's a corner lot, so it's not as straightforward, and it was. So let me show you a little bit. So this is the survey of the property, how it is right now. It's one property that actually has 2 lots. So the way that it's the direction of the lot actually goes more at the way that it's divided, as you see the rectangle, is more, I would say, rectangular towards east-west than north-south. We actually went through planning and zoning to move the lot line in order to create a more buildable lot on the south side because of the creek really cuts through the lot dramatically and decreases the size of the buildable area in that lot. So this is the plan that we presented in planning. And the whole idea was to create two lots, one that would be 8450, which is the one that we're presenting right now, per feet. And then the one above, which is 3,300. And this is actually given, we're going to present it in July. So it's two houses, and it's really hard to determine exactly the rear, the side, the front, because the reality is that we have two fronts, which is Columbia and North Davis. And so they're both considered fronts. And according to, and I think that might be a typo, but according to the land use code it's 50 for the setback, the front setback, the primary and the secondary both are either 15 feet or the average of the block. And so that's why I'll go through it a little bit, why we have a 7-foot setback on that secondary front. But what I was saying in regards to why it's hard to determine, it's because the reality is that even though right now we are considering this as the rear of the lot, it abuts another property. So it's a strange condition because let's say we were to have a 15-foot setback there, it would create a situation that it's nowhere else seen in town, in which you might have between the two houses, like 20 feet, which creates like I would say a hole, as a lack of a better word, an empty space in between the two houses, which is strange. So and it wouldn't help with the pedestrian scale and the streetscape that you're trying to create on that block. So originally, actually, we had thought that North Davis would be, I would say, the primary front, Columbia would be the secondary front, and then we would have this being the rear, which is consistent with the lot above it. And therefore, this would be the side. So there's two ways to go about it and to consider the setback situation. So first, I'll go through the front setback, which if we go back to the survey, as you see, the property that is to the north, in property that is on the same block in North Davis, the setback is actually 7 feet. And that's where we got the 7 feet from for that secondary front. So that's how we determine it. So in order to give a more, again, cohesive frontage throughout the street. And then for the other front, we actually have we have more than 15 feet, we have 17 feet. So
on the south side.
On the south side, sorry, on the south side. So this is where because it's consistent as well with Columbia, in which the houses continue. And again, sorry, if you go to the survey, you can see that the house here next to the neighbor, it's actually also at a similar distance, and it's consistent with the whole street, the whole block. So therefore, that's how we did a deep study in regards to what to do with the setback. So secondary front, we aligned with the log average, which is 7 feet, and then the front would be 15 feet. Then the reason why we're requesting the 5-foot setback on the rear is because if this were to be considered the rear, it's because, again, it makes sense with the house next to it. If we were to consider this being the front and this being the rear, this would be 7 feet. So it would be, or 5, I mean, it could be lower to 5. So it would be consistent in both ways if you consider being it in the other direction. And then for the east side, again, yeah, if this is the side, then yes, we're asking for the reduction to 3.8. However, if this were to be the rear, the accessory structure, it would be required 5 feet. So 3.8, it's a minimum reduction actually. And for the primary structure, where we have more than, basically we have, let me just zoom in here. we have 33 feet in this space, which is the most restringent to that area. So again, sorry this is coming up, but it is a strange configuration of a lot because you have different conditions. And of course, on top of that, we have the creek in which we have been working with Chris Hazen since the beginning in this project. And Chris did the wetland delineation report, and he has looked at the site plan. He actually, he's more than okay with the 5 feet, and he told me that he's writing a letter. Unfortunately, we don't have it for right now, but we'll have it for the next time. But he is in approval of actually having the 5 foot minimum setback from the creek, because there's no special condition in this portion of the creek that is different from any other house that it has built near the creek. So there's no specimen, there's no environmental reason why it should be more than 5. However, we have more than 5 in the primary structure. The secondary structure, there's 2 points in which we actually touch the 5 feet in this particular points. We don't mind, again, separating ourselves, but Chris told us that there's absolutely no need. The reason why we have the flash here on this corner is because we have been also working with Public Works, because they have determined where the curb cuts need to be. And they only allow curb cuts on Columbia for this property. And therefore, the only place where we could actually place the garage would be in this part of the lot, because we don't, staff and anybody, I don't think anybody wants actually a garage door on the front of the building. So that would be that's why we located in this place, because again, working with Public Works, they allow only on Columbia, they don't allow any curb cuts on Davis. I don't know if I'm missing anything in regard to setbacks.
I think it's, we are set back up to 8 feet really from the, so 3 feet additional from the 5 foot setback. And that can be adjusted if you guys would like to see a little more, but I do think Chris was okay and will confirm that. And then on the secondary structure, that little bump out is one of those rectangular concerns, which are going to be removed, and the reduction of the depth of the garage.
He wanted to be here, unfortunately had another appointment, but again, he'll provide a letter stating that he's okay with 5 feet. He's not requesting even more than that. So that's in regards to the setbacks. So again, happy to discuss and see what's the better way to face this lot, as it's kind of tricky to see exactly what's the front, what's the side, what's the rear. If we were to think about it the other way, which was how we initially thought of it, basically this would be the side, which would be 5 feet, but 7 feet, sorry. So 5 foot would be a very minimal reduction. This side would be 5 feet because it's basically the rear for the accessory building. And again, a minimal reduction. And then this two would be the fronts, and they really both comply with what the land code says, that it's 15 feet or the average of the block. So again, the average of North Davis is 7, and here we have 15 at a minimum. So building 4.
We've got one of our concerns striped.
Yeah, 4 struck.
Oh, yeah.
Down.
Yeah.
So there's
But
4.
I think you should show the front
Yeah.
elevation, and
Yeah.
and I think it's these next 4 points to keep to a minimum until we decide on the 2 main, because it could change the project a little bit.
Mhm.
And that this is the main south form. That other facade is, what did we determine?
So it's
60 feet back.
more,
Yeah.
it's more than 60
Yeah.
feet. So I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the drawing of the facade was a bit confusing, and this part of the facade should have been much lighter, because it's actually literally more than 60 feet away from Columbia. So if you look at the floor plan, I'll show you real quick so you can.
Okay, go to the
So here, so this part is what you're seeing there in the back. So this portion, which actually it's a much smaller proportion, it's what should have been seen there. So I'll show you over here. So I highlighted it here in black, which is that portion that is actually facing Columbia at 17 feet at the moment. The other portion of it, I think it's like 70 feet from Columbia. It's way back. So you don't see it. Plus it's full of trees. So you really don't see that part of the elevation.
And then just one more comment on the forms. This, the upper elevation there is the west side. And we've already determined that we can reduce that front portion of the facade. So where we are today is talking about the forms and these retaining walls. And so we're in a 2-foot flood zone, which is it AO, is that right? Anyway, where the first floor has to be 2 feet above any adjacent grade. And so in the back, on the north side,
I'll show you over here.
yeah,
one
that
second,
elevation. And so as we step down, we can get a reduction in that retaining wall.
What happened is that the lot slopes a little bit from north to south. So we are able to basically bring this volume down by actually getting closer to the ground. But the reason you see that it's so elevated, it's because we have to be, again, 2 feet above the highest point, and the highest point is much higher than the street there, much higher. So that's why you see that. And again, the retaining wall can be reduced. We just have to, we'll just have just a tiny slope from the house to the retaining wall. That's not an issue. So we'll reduce the retaining walls, but that's why the house is so elevated.
What are the other conditions?
The other two that we would like comments on, obviously, are the windows and doors. And then also on the bronze siding.
Correct.
Can you talk about that, please?
Yes, so windows and doors or the bronze siding?
The windows and doors, I think they're clear on. Yeah, on the amount of glazing, yeah.
So who wants to see the bronze siding?
Oh, the bronze siding.
Actually, it's similar.
Do you have
to-
a rendering?
Yeah, I
Okay,
will,
great.
but
Those
it's
are-
similar to the project that they actually showed that it's already built, but the idea here is that, and again, you know, being close to the historic area and the historic properties, and at the same time being close to something that it's really not historic at all, which is towards that side, it creates like a beautiful opportunity to create something that is really special for Telluride and interesting, like, and what we thought of was actually trying to capture a little bit of the essence of bringing in some of the aspects that we've seen in other places in Telluride as well. And this, what you see over here, in the lower part, it's what it refers to as the bronze siding, which is basically, again, trying to bring in an element that is of interest and it's different. It doesn't compete. I mean, the way we focus on historical buildings right next to other situations is that by creating a similar form, but not mimicking it, because then it'll be, I think it'll be detrimental to historical. We just want to raise their importance by doing something a little bit different, which is part of what it says in the guidelines as well, as being a little bit creative. So that's the bronze siding, and that the reason is to actually also break the volumes and make it look, you know, lighter, because you have the lower part in one color and the upper part in another one. So visually, it also breaks the volumes down.
And the upper part is what?
Wood, it's white. Right.
And that element on it would be the south elevation to the left of the main mast with the window, there's that.
This one here?
Yeah.
That was the concern of one of her conditions that.
It's stone.
Yeah.
It's stone,
Yeah.
which is also used in different projects in Telluride. So the idea was to create that the mix of those three materials: the wood, the stone, and the bronze.
Questions?
Just to go back and make sure I understand this, the south facade is considered the front facade. And the Davis side is the side yard.
Yeah.
Secondary front.
Well, that's how the memo was written, corner lots.
Yeah, and
But yes, the south side is the front setback. That's how the staff memo was written.
and we have,
But aren't they both technically, Davis and Columbia are both technically fronts, because it's a corner.
They're not both technically fronts. It's corner lots, both streets, 15 feet or the average setback of the block. But then side yards can be reduced. So it based on the setbacks and then the reduction to the east side yard.
Both are fronts, but you can reduce them to the average, which is 7.2.
Both are fronts, but one needs to be considered the primary front.
But not in terms of setbacks. I went through this on a project on the corner of Aspen and Columbia, and it was very clear. Both
Yeah,
are
corner
fronts
lots, it's,
for setbacks.
yes, for setbacks.
Right. So we would be.
Sorry, yes, for
we would be
setbacks.
Hinging on the block average. 7.2. Because of the.
Well,
house.
that doesn't take into account the whole block. That's taking into account one house. There is it's a pretty large block.
Right. Gotcha.
across the street, you have quite a variety. I remember from the other drawings they showed.
So let me ask
That's the only other.
Sorry.
big picture question. Are you saying, based on our feedback on setbacks, that you might consider changing what's the front? And
No, I think Columbia should be.
it should
considered
be,
the
okay.
front.
So you're fixed on that.
And the secondary front running up North Davis.
Okay.
And then, with having the proposed of the lot to the north. Those ideally would both become side yard setbacks, right? With two structures.
So that's why and I don't mean to confuse you, I'm sorry, it's just that.
No, I'm not confused.
It's just that what I'm saying, that when you flip the lot and you put
Well,
it.
no, I would just give them what we're, proposing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, you're fixed on that proposal, and then we need to give you feedback. So, I think, well, we'll handle that in deliberations, but any other questions on different topics?
I got a different topic, is the policy on the parking on 17. It just talks about the design parking areas to be accessed from alleys or rear drives than rather from the street. And this one's right there. Then it's also needs to minimize the surface of area paving and consider using materials that blend with the natural colors and textures of the region. Just my thought on it's in the treatment area to try to encourage putting the garage in the back of the side.
And that's not possible on this site is what we are.
Mhm.
That Public Works has requested no curb cuts for snow storage on Davis.
All the houses.
And the alley is not developed.
The alleys, why can't you?
The alley's fine, but it's gonna be it's the
Yeah, it
smaller
doesn't have
house
with
that
the
we're
alley.
proposing on. there.
There's no alley access.
Yes, there's no alley access for this.
If you look at this image, you'll see that the alley's here. And this particular property that we're presenting is the lower part. The upper part is another house. So actually, for this house, you are right, the entry to the garage is from the alley. But it's a separate project. So that's why, and
So I would consider the south, the front, secondary front on Davis, and then a side. Right, a side yard that that's.
the reason
Then that's the back.
The reason why, again, it's not set in stone what, they're both fronts anyways. North Davis and Columbia. However, they're both fronts. However, when the lot is abutting this lot that also has another house, this feels like a side as well. So that's why. So, but yes, we say, okay, Columbia, let's say it's the main front, North Davis is the secondary front. They both have the same conditions to 15 or the average of the street. And then, basically the rear would be this area. The east.
Okay. Other questions? All right, let's hear from the public. I don't see anybody electronically. If you are on there and you want to speak to this, please raise your hand right now. And while we're waiting, is there anybody here that wants to speak live? Please come to the podium one at a time and give us your name, and please keep your comments under 3 minutes.
Thank you. I'm Mike Miley, live across the street. So this is the first time I've ever heard setbacks kind of discussed kind of loosely. I've built a few things here over the last 50 years. They were sacrosanct as far as I could tell. I was never given an inch. And I haven't seen many of my friends and neighbors get given an inch either. So I'm a little bit perplexed on the magnitude of that. And I kind of scratched my head when you were dividing up these lots, the viability of doing that. You took away your alley access, you were parking at both sites by doing that. So you kind of complicated your own position. But I'm just sitting here looking at the 577 facing Columbia, which is obviously the last. The site setback should be 15 feet. You're saying that because Jack Para's house that he built in the early 70s, when we had Mouse McDonald as a building inspector, as well as a bus driver, missed a few things. So we've been living with that structure for a while. So if you say it's 7.2 setback on that average one house on that block, I'll take your word for it. But two wrongs don't make it right. So 7.2 is not a good side setback for the 577 Columbia project. And also, you're not hearing the second house, but your second house has a problem too. Actually related to Jackson. Anyway, I don't have a real issue with the 5-foot rear setback. Because I would suspect that you have another one coming on the other side, so there's some sort of separation of those houses. But I think the staff nailed it on all the issues. Now down to 25, I guess. So, in articulate version, that's what I have to say.
Thank you.
Can I?
Not yet. Go ahead. Hey, our old friend, come on up. Oh, I'm great.
I used to sit up here years ago.
She sat right here.
Now you can start my 3 minutes.
Oh, sorry.
So good to see you all. You know, Judy's little double wide. Oof. We got so used to it, of course, got lazy. And now they want to put a monster up on that beautiful lot. We live across the street. Let me tell you who lives across the street. We have our dentist, town dentist, directly across the street. And then next to that, our good people that come from Arizona. He's in a wheelchair now and has fixed up his house so he can stay in it. Then we have Mike, who's been everything from the mayor to, realtor, everything in this town for years and years and years. And then we have old lady Brady, who used to run the schools. And, and then we have the doctor's COLAR at the north side. So that's the professional group that lives year round, right across the street. And then we find I think understandably, everyone wants big, everyone wants grand, but this is a little tiny short street. We don't need big and grand. We need something that fits into the historic area that's right there and that fits into our quiet neighborhood. Of course, the buses run back and forth because the school is the entrance to the school. So keep in mind that we really need this trimmed way down. I used to sit right over there and I appreciate all that you do. It's considerable work. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other public comments?
Yeah, yeah, I'm Doug Tuller.
Go ahead, go up there, Doug. Yep. Read your name into the mic.
Hi, I'm Doug Tuller. I'm counsel for the office. Just, Mark, I just want to respond, just to be clear, because there was a little bit of an unfortunate kind of confusion, I think, on the setback issues. Honestly, you asked if they're stuck on this, on what the front is. I think honestly, you guys need to make an interpretation, because there was no issue raised with when the application was filed. The first of these setback issues came up was last week. So, and I think what you guys, I think would help everybody so they can come back and give you a good design as they come back, is to decide what the primary front is. Because as Stacy was saying, I don't think it's clear at all. Because honestly, when I look at this, it seems like the proper front primary front, if you will, would be Davis Street, which would mean you would have 7 and 15 in the back. For whatever reason, they're picking the other front street and doing, so you've got the 15 and reducing down to 5, and then the 3, you can reduce to 3. But I think you guys really, I do think there's an interpretation you need to do. And the point that they're trying to make here is it is an unusual lot. It's kind of goofy. It's a corner lot. You got this issue here, and I think staff's taken an interpretation. I think everyone's been struggling with this, and frankly, you guys should give them some guidance, and so they can design accordingly. I think.
Yeah.
But I see my vote. I think the proper designation is that Davis is the primary front. When you look at this, so you got these 2 houses now, and when they're being built, they have side yards next to them.
Okay, thank you. John, has a comment, staff?
If I could just clarify quickly, the comments that have been made about this lot and its orientation. The orientation is determined really by the town grid that's in the design guidelines. Also, our land use code does not distinguish between primary and secondary fronts or primary and secondary frontages. So there is one front of this house, and as far as we know, given the application, the way it was submitted, is that it faces Columbia.
And that's in concert with the town grid in your opinion?
Yes.
That it should face.
And we
Columbia.
do not have secondary fronts, so
Yeah.
the side yard would be Davis. We look at applications for corner lots not infrequently, and this is pretty common. So it appears to me from the way it was submitted, the side yard is on Davis. It's not an interpretation for HARC to make.
But
It's
but
standard
a
of our
corner
language.
is 15 on the front and 15 on the side.
Yes. I hope that helps.
Yes,
clarify.
thank you,
Yeah.
Jonna.
You bet.
I also would like to say, if the front setback was Davis, this application would no longer be land use code compliant. So because of the setback to the rear of the accessory unit. So the front is Columbia.
All right. Okay, well, that's what's shown, so let's react to that and go with it.
React to public comment and everything that just happened.
Okay.
But is there any other public comment first?
Jesse Ray's hand is raised.
Oh, okay. Yes, Jesse Ray, unmute yourself, please.
Hi, I'm actually gonna take my council hat off for a second because my house is on the 500 block of West Columbia, and I'd like to echo what Ann Brady said. You know, all of the houses on this block are very modest, and most of them historical. So I can completely understand where she's coming from. Also, I I may have missed it somewhere in the packet, but where's the parking gonna be for this house? Because there's no on-street parking on Columbia down there where Judy Kiernan parked on her lot for
It's in the secondary structure.
It's in the secondary structure. Okay, just checking because we're pretty congested here as it is. But that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other public comment? I don't see any. Piper, do you see anybody else? Okay. Then, do you want to make a rebuttal to anything you heard?
Yes. Sorry again for the confusion. Just to clear two things up. We did not divide the lot. About the comment, it's two lots. At some point, I don't remember when, 19 something. Judy actually divided the lots. And her house sits on top of the lots. And according to the code, we cannot combine the lots, actually. So we have to keep them separate. They're two lots legally. It was a surprise for us as well. We thought it was two lots. But it's two, that's one thing. The others, again, we don't mean to confuse, and primary front is Columbia. Don't worry, what we're just saying is that the reductions that we're asking on that as a rear, that being considered as a rear, it feels like the side because there's a house behind. And then according to the code on section 3, 204 C4, minimum front yard, it says on corner lots, both street, 15 feet or the average setback of the block in which the parcel lies. Unless modified by HARC, however, the setback shall not be less than 5 feet on the front. So it does say 15 or the average, and that's on both streets. And that's what it says on that, and that's how we, on the corner lots, exactly, in that section, that particular section. So that's why we took the average on that one, which is 7, and then, and even though it's a short block, that's the house that's there. And if you also see the houses that are actually in front of, in North Davis, it also goes along with the same lines. They don't have a 15-foot setback. They're actually, I believe some of that, I think one has actually like 5 on the west of North Davis, actually.
Different zone.
And block.
No, and I know it block, but I'm just talking about the pedestrian field. On this block, the average is 7 because that's the one that it has. But in regards to the
Okay.
streetscape and the pedestrian field,
We get it. Okay.
that's all.
Any other comments on what you heard from public? Unfortunately, public comments closed, but I think we understand everybody's points. Okay, well, thank you very much. And we'll begin deliberations. And look, it's a continuation with 27 conditions. I'd like to suggest something here. You know, they gave us their concerns on windows and doors, but I look in the guidelines and the ones cited by Erica, and they're so clear about traditional size, verticality, et cetera, that with a local architect, I don't know that we need to debate that. And maybe the siding, but I think it comes down to the setbacks dialogue. But just to get an easy one out of there, is give feedback. Bronze siding, I don't know. Did you have any feedback for them? Of course, we're gonna see it again, but I don't know. They asked for feedback.
I'm trying to find the section, hold on, because I had a thought.
Bronze,
28.
EWT 28A, 1 and 3,
So 28 reads,
28A.
and I don't like always getting in the habit of reading the guidelines out loud. But in this case, traditionally limited pallet building materials was used. This same selection of materials should be continued, but it does then talk about new materials so it's acknowledging that new materials can be considered. New materials also should have a simple finish, which I believe a brushed, finish like that could be considered a simple finish, similar to those seen historically. So the guideline itself opens the door to a new material that is simple. Now, my only concern is that it's a fairly prominent material that's used on a pretty large portion of the building. I'd like to see it more as an accent.
Yeah.
Minimized, but I don't have a problem with it as a material.
Okay, it's straw poll, but I see heads taking more of an accent, right? The bronze material?
I agree with that, but I'd also like maybe when you come back to bring a sample, so we can actually see what it looks
Yeah.
like, because I can't tell from.
Okay. All right, now let's tackle the elephant in the room. So let's go around the four corners. Let's just do this real logically. And where should there be relief, if any place, 15 feet on the front, 15 feet on the side, or HARC has the discretion, as you know, to go average neighborhood. And the only other thing I'd say is, normally when we're dealing with wetlands, it's if there's some impossibility of building it practically. I think this is a function of square foot. I don't want to be so harsh, but it's just, maybe it was X square feet less, then they got 15 feet and they're total compliance, but who wants to start?
I'll start. So I would say that, I would be fine with a reduction to the 5-foot setback on the rear. Or
A reduction of 15.
sorry, reduction from 15 to 5, as long as that mass.
On the north.
On the
Rear north.
as long as that mass steps down. To the north setback. I think the 15-foot setback should generally stay as is, with possibly the exception of the garage. Looks like to me the garage could shape a little bit, move and move, give a little bit more space than 3 feet 8. I don't know if it'll quite get to 7 feet. But that might be a spot to compromise on the eastern setback, the accessory structure, and possibly the front yard setback of 15, although I'm not sure if we're allowed to make a compromise on the front setback or not.
Well, the house is 17, right? Is that
On the south primary is 17.7.
I'm talking about the accessory structure.
section.
I'm trying to figure out how can they fit a garage over in that space, is what
Oh.
I'm trying to wrap my head around.
But you mean that's the 3'8" they're requesting?
Yeah. So to me, I think the biggest question is, can they come back with measurements of the block, and what's the average setback of the block for the western setback? And is it acceptable to go down to 7.4 or 7.2, or should that be 15 feet? And then my final comment is, I think if they get support of the town planning staff for the 5-foot setback for the wetlands, I think I could support that
On the which side?
on both sides of the wetlands.
Oh, okay.
Garnet Creek,
Okay,
and we're supposed to get a report.
or a concurrence from Chris that says, okay, yeah.
Would you like Ron to provide comments for the next meeting about that? Would that be helpful?
For Ron to?
Yeah.
No?
No, at the next meeting, would that be helpful
think so.
when you're
Yeah,
reviewing it?
course.
Okay, great.
Sure.
I think this is one of the reasons why HARC is allowed to consider setbacks in conditions like this, because functionally, this is a side yard setback. There is a house beside it. Or will be. There's a lot beside it.
The northern lot.
Yes. So I'm just saying that
Yeah.
I can also wrap my head around
That's the easiest
That being
one for me
5 feet.
to say. That's, I don't.
Is there going to be setback on the other side? You'll have
The side yard is dependent
between,
on an actual average of the block report.
is there only one house up above this?
So
I think, yeah.
I can't remember.
So are we all concurred the rear north 5'2" is okay, right? And that's what I'm hearing.
Well, I've said it, Matt said it.
I would say so, depending on what the massing is up. But I think.
Well,
could
it's a big
support
step down. Yeah, and so they're here, they're making notes, I can see. So straw poll on the 15-foot front and side, any relief or stick to it. It's a function of square foot. It's not anything to do with feasibility of building, right? I mean, what would be the reason to give relief? Maybe there is. And if so, it can't be the front.
it.
Columbia.
That's the corner that you're gonna want to push back.
This is another one of these conversations that's awkward a little bit for us HARC members because it's a land, because setbacks are land use code items, right?
Yeah.
But it says or 15 feet or the block average. Right? So if the block average can be established at a number that isn't 15, it's not.
There's only one house. That's
Well-
the weird thing about this particular.
It is what it is. I mean, I can't go back in time and justify or unjustify.
But the past mistake doesn't make up, we know that. If there were 5 houses, it's one thing. To me, if it's one, it wasn't written about just the
Okay,
averages.
That's another way to look at it. I'm open to looking at it that way too.
When that, were you gonna say something?
I've been glancing at the Google Earth map and it looks like most things on West Columbia seem to be about 15 feet. I don't have a reference from any of the other documents.
So in feedback to help them, we're okay at the rear and the north. The 15 feet is most critical on the front Columbia, we believe. And we want to see the average of the block on the sides
On the west.
or west side.
And then I just
West.
think it's practical for them to squeeze in a fairly code compliant garage.
Yeah.
On the east, but it's gonna be tough.
And I mean,
They're showing 17'7" for the house setback from Columbia.
yeah,
That's already there.
so we're already there.
We're already there.
Okay.
It's not a problem.
So it's about the sides. And the west side in particular. And then the garage. But the garage, anybody gotta come, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, I'm less sensitive to the garage. Right? I mean,
If it's a small scale and a sensitive design, having it come a little bit proud of 15 feet, that makes it practical.
okay.
Well, as I recall, it's only 1200. It doesn't approach the maximum height.
Seems to be.
Yeah, good point. So it's already small mass and scale and, okay, so we want to see the average calculations on the west side. What else about setbacks? Oh, the 5 foot on the wetlands, each side on the wetlands from that per Chris Hazen's functionally saying there's no problem, but do we have any mass and scale or any other issue on setbacks from the wetlands? Granting any relief?
I have one that's sort of tangential. Policy 11, positive open space.
Oh, which is what the neighbors are bringing.
So policy 11A 2, decks and porches should not occupy significant portion of a site's open space. I think that deck is significant. It occupies a significant portion of the site's open space.
I'd agree with that.
Reduce the size of the deck.
Yeah, it could be softscape, it could be a lot of things. It could be more yard, it could be more landscaping, more green, it could be more a lot of things, but right now a deck should not occupy a significant portion, and it does.
Is that number 28? To be,
No, it's
or is that in here?
it's 11, policy positive
Oh.
open space.
No, but I mean, in the conditions, there isn't one.
There isn't one.
So it would be number
It
28.
would be 28.
It'd be 27 because 4
Seven
was.
could
struck.
happen.
Well, because one was struck,
Yeah.
okay. Well,
I'd
we've
still-
been to
Oh, no, we
32,
won't do
we've
it.
been to 32 once in my 9 years, but I don't think we need to get there now.
You do 4.
So, okay, so straw poll, everybody good with 28 reference the open space and that size, the size of the deck and more green space maybe, okay. So that's 28. But what, on the wetland setback, can we give them some feedback to help them? What do we? Deck's gonna take care of that.
That's the part that's the closest, with the exception of the garage. So if that is back, there's more green space there. There's only one corner that's maybe what, 3 feet. from
Yeah.
the Line, and back here, we're, I don't know, 10 or 15 feet from that 5 foot line, so probably 15. 3 feet or so across there.
The rear, it's good, so.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'd say that's good. We want to see the report about that.
yep,
And that we reduce the deck area, make it more of a green space. I think that'd be.
all right. Do we have,
Did you hear me on that?
A little bit, yeah.
Do we have other discussion? Are we ready to make a motion?
I think Cornet Creek is a wetland, you know, it's been trenched, it's fairly, its course is defined. It doesn't expand out from its banks, we hope.
It once.
It did that one time. It was different then. Anyway, that's a way of me saying, I think that 5-foot setback is sufficient from Cornet Creek. In my mind.
Okay. And on the west side, we want to see the average of the block before we commit to going anything less than 15 feet, and it is definitely 17, over 17 feet on the, from Columbia, which was a great thing. So any other discussion? Okay, we're ready.
I do have one note for the correction to the proposed motion. The address is cited as 577 West Colorado. That should be Columbia for whoever reads that.
Yeah, Columbia.
Uh,
Thanks, Ally. Okay. Well, Stacy, since you want to do a friendly amendment on that, or you just want to make the whole motion?
I'll just do the whole motion. I move to continue to August 16, 2023 HARC meeting, the small scale new construction and insubstantial scale new construction at 577 West Columbia, Lot BR Block 10 West Telluride Edition, based on the findings in the staff memo dated June 21, 2023, and with the following conditions, 1 through 3 is stated, strike number 4. 5 is stated, 6 will be changed to say revise the roof to contain simpler intersecting forms per EWT 23A. Number 7 through 27 as stated, and we'll add a number 28, EWT number 11. Sorry. Well, it's 11A2. Decks and porches should not occupy a significant portion of a site's open space. This motion is based on evidence and testimony provided at a public hearing held on June 21, 2023, with notice of such hearing provided as required by the Telluride Land Use Code.
Very good. And my only suggestion is.
Kieran will second that.
Oh, well, I don't have any other friendly amendments. So Kieran, go ahead. You said yes. So let's just vote and get it over with, and I have a comment.
Kieran, yes.
Stacy, yes.
Matt, yes.
Mark, yes.
Bob, yes.
Okay. So my only suggestion is, as we always say, there's enough conditions here that I would recommend come back with your revisions, go through it if you would with staff first before you come to us. Because we don't want to just continue. But I would also say neighbors had some strong comments. We had some strong comments. We didn't even dwell on mass and scale and so forth. Please take those to heart. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. Thanks. All right. Here we go. Work session.
There's.
Oh, we got to have a motion for the continuation.
Oh, great.
Yeah, let's, does somebody make the motion to continue the number 3?
I move to move the project 577 West Columbia Lot AR to continue item without discussion to the July 19th, 2023 HARC meeting.
That was second.
Kieran, yes.
Stacy, yes.
Matt, yes.
Mark, yes.
Bob, yes.
So be it. So the work session, the first 2 work sessions is the land use code amendments. And it's a work session to discuss potential amendments to the land use code pertaining to the lot line vacations and Telluride question 300, which was passed by the Telluride electorate 2015 to not allow the vacation of lot lines in order to combine 2 or more land use code compliant lots, except in specific situations per land use code section 5201C. Staff member Ron Corliss. Ron.
Thank you, Chair. On HARC Commission. Pull up the PowerPoint real quick. So this item tonight, it is a work session, so feel free to interrupt at any point, or if you have a question, just let me know. I'm going to try to go through this as quickly as I can, but try to be as thorough. Get this to work. So as a reminder of what ballot 300 was intended to do, I'll just read the language of the ballot. Land use code be amended to not allow the vacation of lot lines in order to combine two or more land use compliant lots into one. Example, the creation of larger than average lots for large homes with the following exceptions. For purposes of commercial development, in cases where existing homes or buildings straddle lot lines for housekeeping, where both HARC and P&Z vote by extraordinary majority to allow the vacation of lot lines for an exceptional public benefit or on-site affordable housing. And number 4, unless required by underlying zoning in the Hillside Developing 2 Zone District. So this ballot measure was approved more than 7 years ago. Town council has the authority to amend or repeal the language 6 months after the ballot measure is approved. So it's in the 7 years that we've had this ballot measure, we've never codified it. We have implemented it. We implement it based on our interpretation of the language. But objective tonight is to consider this work session clarifying language for the codification of the ballot 300 measure. For context, I thought it'd be good to identify the why the ballot measure was put in front of the voters. And the best way to do that is to identify or to provide you with the whereas language. So I'm just going to read these. Whereas the town was platted in the late 1800s with a grid system of small lots, which has much to do with the town, with how the town has developed over the last century, creating a unique, familiar small town atmosphere. Whereas Telluride is designated as a National Historic Landmark District by the National Park Service, one of 6 historic districts in Colorado. Whereas the town of Telluride is losing that small town feel as multiple lots are being combined into larger lots to build homes out of scale with the community. Whereas this phenomenon changes the character of neighborhoods and the town and is accelerating both the loss of affordable rental housing and the demolition of smaller homes. Whereas most of these larger homes are empty for the vast majority of the year and do not contribute to the year-round occupancy and vitality of the neighborhoods or businesses leaving the neighborhoods dark and lifeless. And whereas the land use code is a dynamic document that the town uses to direct development in the town, and it can be and has been altered over time. And finally, whereas the town or the people of Telluride feel that the town must take action to help preserve that which is Telluride. So from that, I've summarized the issues: larger lots to build homes out of scale with the community, homes that are empty, loss of affordable housing, and demolition of smaller homes. I think the primary focus of ballot measure was to address the issue of the larger homes. The question that we presented, Planning and Zoning Commission, we presented this at their meeting, a special Planning and Zoning Commission meeting a couple of weeks ago. One of the questions that we presented to the P and Z was, did the ballot measure language apply to single family and two-family homes, or did it also apply to multifamily homes? And the consensus was at the meeting that it primarily addresses the issue of single-family homes and two-family homes, but not condo development or what we consider multifamily homes. One thing that the ballot measure was clear is that the land use code should be the tool, because a dynamic document to direct development altered over time. And so what we're looking at is the possibility of addressing in the land use code lot line vacations, demolitions, minimum lot sizes, and even possibly additions. One of the other issues that we brought in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission was based on the identification of one family and two family homes as the primary focus of the ballot measure, that we focus also on the hillside transitional residential and historical residential, and not the non-residential zones. At that meeting, Planning and Zoning Commission felt like it was important to also include the residential commercial and the accommodations one zoning, since those zoning districts also permit one family and two family homes, although they're a little bit unique from more typical residential zoning. So the first thing that I can show you is some possible language that addresses the lot line vacations for standard lots. What we're thinking is, and in the language that I'm going to present, is that we would allow for some flexibility through a PUD approval, and that would be consistent with the ballot measure as it talks about extraordinary or public benefits and extraordinary majority of commission and council, or the HARC and P&Z. So this is a lot of words, but let me just read these. What we're thinking is we could provide a note with the land use table. We often provide notes below the land use table that clarify the land uses. This would be a note for one family, two family units in the residential and the residential commercial and accommodations one zoning. And I'll just read this, and if you want to stop and talk about this one, we can do that, or I can move on. So it'd be in note 1, a lot designated for a one or two family unit may be consolidated or aggregated with one or more adjoining lots. To eliminate non-conforming lots as per section 4-101, or to eliminate pre-existing building encroachments across lot lines, including open decks, porches, roof eaves, and stoops, or by means of a planned unit development. And then the last paragraph, however, unless approved through the PUD process, no consolidation or aggregation of lots may occur if one or more lot lines may be adjusted or repositioned to eliminate building encroachments or other nonconformities without resulting in any other nonconformities. So the intent was to reflect the ballot 300 language as a note to the land uses. And I can, if there are any questions or
I'm
comments.
confused about C. I don't.
Well, I was gonna sort of ask the same thing. So C essentially exempts a PUD from this, what would be this section of the land use code.
Exempts, say that again, I'm sorry.
A lot doesn't everyone want to.
I read it to be that you can do these things, but if you create any other nonconformities, game over. That's all.
Well, it's a lot designated for a 1 or 2 family unit may be subdivided. That's what consolidated aggregated means, right?
Mhm. Through a PUD.
Through a PUD. So now if you go through a PUD, you don't have to get a majority, unanimous vote of both planning and zoning and HARC because you have an exceptional public benefit of affordable housing. I don't mean exempt. I mean it.
Yeah, I
It-
know what you, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't keep the language in the ballot measure as far as the extraordinary majority or, because HARC doesn't even review subdivisions anyway, for the most part, since we made. that
Unless
change.
there's a ballot 300 issue.
Yeah. And this would do away with that. But it would be consistent by requiring a PUD, the public benefits associated with a PUD. That's the intent of the ballot measure, I think.
So if, I'm just trying to figure out what would be an example of C. If you have, right now you have a lot line that's under a building. Or close to a building, or too close to the building. And you move that lot line to make it non-conforming, or make it conforming. And you're saying that you can do that as long as you don't create other non-conformities.
Well, what we're saying is if you can correct a nonconformity by moving a lot line, and you still have two conforming lots by moving that lot line. That's a cure. Otherwise, remember this.
And when you're talking
Yeah,
about.
that's the cure. I mean, you've cured, so you can do that aggregation, or not aggregation, that adjustment of the lot line.
So let's say we got two 25-foot lots. And right now there's a house that sits on across that line between the two.
Mhm.
We consolidate the two lots to make one lot in order to make that no longer non-conforming.
And it's currently housekeeping.
That's housekeeping.
Yeah.
But would somebody be able to then say that's a piece of crap house and tear it down?
Well,
You've got a big lot.
that's further in this presentation. Yeah, that's one of the issues that we're facing right now.
I have a just kind of question comment. Is taking this step to a PUD, taking it too far? Is there some other sort of variance request or something that could, some other process this could go through that doesn't involve the complexities of a PUD and do not require public benefit?
Not really. I mean, the variance process is based on hardship, but it's not, doesn't require any public benefit. The only mechanism for doing that is through a PUD.
The benefits required now.
Sorry, was that?
Right now, under ballot question 300, some exceptional public benefit is required. And the only other way to require that is through a PUD.
So it's consistent with the intent of the ballot measure. It's not, doesn't reflect the language that was submitted to the voters, but it is trying to meet the intent of that.
Okay, any other comment about C? All right, I think we're good.
Okay. So the other issue is demolitions. Now, this wasn't in the ballot measure as far as specific language, but we think that's an issue, like you were saying. And we'd like to consider establishing limits on the replacement size with some flexibility. Now, this is a lot of wording as well, but let me just, this is under the section 7-306A9 and basically provides for the criteria for HARC's consideration of a demolition. And applicants have to submit a redevelopment plan to show what's going to be occurring on that property if the demolition is approved. So we've added language specifically addressing single family or one family and two family units. So let me read this. 7-306A10. The applicant for the demolition of a one or two family residence has agreed to redevelop the originating site pursuant to an approved redevelopment plan that includes the items under 7-306A9, which is above, and that details the replacement, that the replacement structure will closely represent the size and dimensions of the demolished residence, not including any nonconformities as per section 4-102. The standard may be waived by HARC if an employed dwelling unit or an affordable housing unit is also constructed on the site and redevelopment otherwise meets all design review and dimensional standards.
So that's saying that they could build a bigger house if they do.
Yes.
Employee or affordable housing.
Yeah, they could meet the maximum if they provide.
Maximum allowed for instead of a 25-foot line, 50-foot line.
Well, maximum allowed for the whatever
For
lots.
that, so, yeah. Interesting.
Very good with this.
I think that's, I like that. I think that addresses what I was saying on the other question.
It still has, that last sentence still has to comply with, as I understand it. So
I think,
So where does this, I'm sorry, what 7-306, what's the parent of this section? What are we adding this to?
we're adding this as, I mean, there are
a new
9 paragraphs under that section, but I didn't identify all of them. This is basically the section of the land use code that provides for the criteria for demolition.
So
What
this
they
is
have-
saying if you demo a house, you have to build one back the same.
Close to it.
That's
Ish, or
that's
provide
kind of
house
where
there,
we're, yeah,
housing.
where we're, I mean, this is not as specific language that we had originally. This allows for some flexibility. And so we've identified closely represent the size and dimensions. Originally,
In
we
all
had,
instances, or is this specific to like?
no, yeah, this is for 1 and
I
2
don't like it
family.
at all. Are you kidding me?
What'd you say?
So I own a house, let's say I own a house that's 1,200 square feet. I have floor area and site coverage left. I can't demo that piece of junk 1975 house and build something bigger. I have to closely represent
Well,
it.
you can build something bigger if you provide an affordable housing.
wait a minute, that's only if we're vacating lot lines and so forth. To Stacy's point, this doesn't say or refer to just a normal lot that you have to build it closely after you demo it. That's, it's only if we're talking about this.
If you had 2 lots in a house that crossed the line.
So that was my original
Only
question.
that.
Is this? I can't see the whole document, right? So I can't follow where are
Should
we?
not
in-
affect what you do on your lot.
Well, and I'm not trying to make it personal.
Well, no, but I mean, right, a person.
That was just an example.
Unless it affects, it's part of 300, you do what you want to. It doesn't have to closely represent the size. You demolish it. Then as long as you meet the guidelines, it's bigger. It's outside of this,
If-
right?
Well, this applies to 1 and 2 family homes. Again, it's trying to reflect the language that was in the intent, the whereases. The intent was to prevent larger
It sounds
homes.
like it's an expansion of the intent.
Yeah,
No,
this has
it's-
nothing to do with lot lines.
Well, Yeah, you're right.
Oh, my gosh,
I don't like it.
this
I
takes
mean, are
it
there
beyond the
that many
intent.
lots that could even like welcome that addition? I mean, I know there's some, but like if they're historic, like you might be confined with the spaces to not even be able to build those extra ADUs on there.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
and this goes back to the originating site. And we're talking about, maybe we're not talking about it anymore, that combining the lots. This is not,
No,
has nothing to do with.
This is,
I think we've moved on.
we
from that.
moved on and I did not.
So, and that's what Stacy was trying to address. What is
So,
Just want to make sure I understand.
so what I think at least half of this group thinks that it should only apply this lot line vacation. What you do on your lot was not part of the intent of 300. If it's just one lot, we're just talking about one lot,
Well,
1,200 square foot, now you're gonna be 1,800 square feet because you
Whatever's
could
allowed,
comply.
what's allowed.
Whatever's allowed.
as
Why-
as
why
you
are
all
we-
may or may not recall, we used for a couple years after the ballot 300 passed. We had the authors come to every HARC and P and Z meeting and tell us what the intent was, because it changed every time. I can't read into what the intent to me was a little muddled. And we couldn't, I wasn't clear on what the intent was then. I know what the stated intent was. But 7 years on, I don't know if we can unpack, how are we gonna unpack what the intent was? We're gonna quiz every of the 610 voters that voted yes, what they thought they were voting for.
Let's just back up and say, what do we think the right thing is? Regardless of 300. I mean, do we still want people to have freedom on their lot? They've got some little 1,200 square foot house to do 1,800 feet, which is not close.
Well, ballot 300 is specific to lot line.
I know,
such as-
I know, so this is an end run, end around.
Well, this is language we're presenting. I mean, we'd like to hear your input. If you completely disagree with it, then
Okay, we'll take a straw poll.
I'd
Start this in, Andrew.
I disagree.
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 Leave it in.
Trying to keep us here till after 8.
No, I mean. it's worth it.
Okay,
It
so,
doesn't matter what I-
okay, well,
so
what can I say?
We have a meeting tomorrow night with P and Z.
6-1.
We'll let them know that that's the consensus of HARC.
Yeah, well, that's a super majority,
super majority.
even though it's not required.
We're
Took it out.
This doesn't apply to the lot line vacation.
Yeah, in all sincerity, we think we should stick with what we've been doing for 7 years, adjudicating lot line vacations. And
Well,
not that.
and I hear that, but, and we did present that language, but then the question came up, your concern about what's happening. And that's what we're trying to address.
But on one lot, we can't build a monster house because it won't pass our guidelines litmus test. So what? are we
You'll
trying to
end up with 24 conditions.
Yeah, so we already have this power. We don't need that sentence.
On top of that, if you start to get in the PUD zone, you're probably gonna get expanded height and setbacks, and you're gonna get other asks that are gonna be contrary to what we're trying to do, scale things out.
Good point.
Would you say though, if this applied to property that they're also asking for a lot line vacation because say the house sits on 2 lots, that they would have to follow this?
If it's a certain size.
It's already a certain size and you got it, you took care of the problem of a lot line going down really a house. Even though it's a bigger lot, but you still apply this and say you can't build a bigger house. In that case, in that example.
So it would only apply if there's a lot line vacation.
Yes.
This would only apply. Is that what you're saying?
Is that an overreach of that? That's basically expansion of the housekeeping, number 2. Right? But it's even more restricted. Because then you either have to keep it the same general size, or you have to then add an EDU and AU 80, AHU, which will be 450 square feet. A minimum.
It doesn't say you can't do an addition.
What was that?
It doesn't say you can't do an addition. It says you can't demolish the house and build it. A
Sure.
big new bigger.
So that's the way around it. Yeah, because you wouldn't want it, if you had this language applying just to the lot line vacation, you'll want to do the addition. If you're somebody that wants more square footage. Or unless you add the ADU, but. Well, we have consensus that we think the answer is, we already have the tools to adjudicate some
So-
oversized house.
Yeah.
That there's no lot line issue.
Okay.
We have the tools. We don't need this. But what about on the lots where we thought we were going with lot line vacations? Do we want them to have to closely represent the same size on a double lot? I mean, that's the reason they got a vacation of the lot line to build something bigger, but not, are we going to say, well, you can build an addition, but you can't? If you tear it down, because this is about demolition, it must be close to your size. How do we feel about that?
I think it's a big overreach. I think if the goal is to create more affordable housing, which was not a part of question 300.
Oh, it
which should
was.
be-
It was
Well,
in the
it
where,
was the headline on the,
Okay.
on the,
Well,
on
I
the
wasn't
petition.
here, so.
it's in
should
the
be a
warehouse
carrot, not a
language. So I have a question, and maybe Ally can answer it. Is there an issue if we limit, if we provide this language only for situations where there's lot line vacations, but for any other standard size lot, we don't? I mean, is that,
So if we only apply this in the situation where the lots are vacated to allow someone to demolish,
yeah,
yeah, I think that's fine, I think.
Otherwise, it's the normal process otherwise. Yeah.
Mhm.
okay.
And I think maybe a little bit of clarification here, Ron. So if someone vacates a lot line to demolish a structure, they can, under this provision, they can build back the same size, right?
Close.
Where they can, close to the same size, where they can build back larger so long as they provide an affordable housing unit or EDU, or they could just re-subdivide that lot into 2 land use code compliant lots and develop under the code, right?
Yeah.
So this is really only meant to apply when you're vacating a lot line to create a super lot, because you got in under the provision of, the housekeeping, and then you all of a sudden think you can build a very large house.
So what's the statute of limitations then? You vacate, right now you can't demo without a redevelopment plan. You have to do a parallel with the redevelopment, right? So you couldn't just demo and provide a vacant lot for sale or otherwise. And then someone else, I mean, you would have to propose the redevelopment along with the application for demolition,
Oh, well, at least one lot.
at least one lot.
Sell the other, or do whatever you want with another one.
So I think the effect of this would be to encourage people, if they are planning on demolishing a structure that straddles lot lines, to, instead of retain 1 mega lot, just add another line to create 2 compliant lots, correct? Would that be an effect of this language?
If the lot's big enough.
If the lot is big
Yeah.
enough?
The pitfall here is that someone could vacate the lot line by demoing the house that straddled the lot line and build back not in excess of 4,000 square feet, or subdivide and build 2 4,000 square foot houses.
Well, you know what they're gonna do.
So is that the result? That's not the result we want. Maybe it is, I don't know, but we have to be eyes wide open about what the result would be: significantly increased density, a significant decrease in setbacks and open space. Just,
There will be no shadow of a doubt.
and if you,
They will build 2 4,000 square foot houses, and now we've got. That's what they'll do. They have to. I mean, that's what they do.
Well, that's assuming it's,
We don't want that.
well, they may not, they may or may not, but that's an
The
out.
math, I mean, if you buy something, that's what they're gonna
Well,
do.
maybe you can afford to build that, maybe you can't, but
Wait a minute now, if we're talking about, let's say we have a house that straddles a lot line. And we're moving the lot line in order to, or eliminating lot line. To make that conforming. We then have let's say it's 2 25-foot lots, we have a 50-foot lot. And we can build up to a 4,000 square foot house on it. It's not, you're not demoing a house and then splitting it back again.
No, you're
So
right.
forget the language of close, you mean just stick with the 4,000 maximum above ground space? Because
It's, Bob, it's been done. A lot line has been vacated and put back to develop two.
It was taken away because there was a house on it and then they put it back. Yeah. Who did that?
We don't have to talk about specifics, but I'm not saying that's what they will do or what they won't do. It's just, it is an outcome that could.
So let me ask this board a question from a mass and scale and context of neighborhood particularly. You're driving down the street and this occurred and there was a choice that they could demo it and build a new lot lines and 2 4,000 square foot houses, or with the restriction of 4,000 square feet on a lot. Would you rather see something that you even gave them, let's say, 25% more square foot somehow bonus for this demolition thing, or lock them to the 4,000, or go by and see 2 4,000 square foot houses jammed in there? I mean, I'd rather see a slightly, not a monster house, a slightly larger house and all this open space.
I agree, but I think more importantly, this is a way to incentivize the construction of affordable housing units.
Well, it's also to reflect the language, the whereas language in ballot 300 to when you demolish, you're not replacing it with a larger out of scale home. It's the language in there.
So we right now, unless it applies to the lot line, we're 6-1. But how do we feel? What do we want to tell P and Z for tomorrow night on scenario of the lot line vacation? They're just limited to 4,000 feet, or they're limited to closely. I mean, to me, they should at least be able to follow the guidelines of a maximum 4,000 square foot, no bonus or anything. But to say there's some old little shack on there, I mean, I don't think there's many of those left on the big lot, but there could be. That they're limited to closely represent the size and dimensions of whatever that was, unless they have a housing. I think that's taking it too far. You gotta tell them something tomorrow, because they're gonna start galvanizing this into a.
I think about 300 needs to be codified, but closely to the intent that was voiced in the ballot language. And the ballot language was all about lot line vacations.
For the purpose.
Well,
but still, that's an overarching caveat. It's all about the lot lines, and then paragraph 2 is for housing, et cetera. So you're right, that's the premise, and we're straying outside those.
Yeah, I think that, like you say, the original premise was you have 2 25-foot empty lots. And you want to join them together, and make a 50-foot lot, put a bigger house.
Right.
But why not just limit them to the 4,000 square foot above ground we have now, and they have nice, beautiful yards?
Because this was hot, this was fresh off the heels of people joining 4 lots.
Yeah.
Well,
sorry.
Well, I mean, I think I have a clear understanding. I can present to the P and Z that there are some major issues with this.
I don't know what our recommendation is on the second
Well,
case.
it sounds like you were 6-1, that you were in opposition to this language. If it just applied generally.
That's the easy part.
Yeah, that's.
But now I don't know where we are.
If it applies to lot line vacation.
I would just vote that let the guidelines prevail as is a 4,000 square foot maximum house, and that may be a little harsh, but it's no monster house. That's what we're trying to prevent. And not restrict it to closely. I'm sure there's got to be some examples that closely represent some, 1,500 square foot house that's sitting there now.
What about the one we just looked at, right? We have.
Nope.
It's a really great example.
Okay.
Nope.
Don't talk about it.
My gut reactions, it seems like an overreach, but there's a lot of things to study, unintended consequences.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I can make a recommendation right now with what to do. I think I'd like to see the language and think about it and see what examples it would apply to and come back.
If we
Another work session.
if we clarified that this only applied to lot line or where a lot line vacation occurred, would that,
Didn't
Still
James
be a
do a
problem.
study of how many structures were sitting on lot lines or something like that?
I don't know.
I mean, if we're only talking about one or two projects, we could talk about one or two projects, but
We've had multiple,
I know, but how many are left?
So we got to get through. Is this the last part of this?
no, I've got a couple.
Yeah, I
more.
think there's more. So, but
A little more
you
overreach.
got the 6 to 1 if it doesn't apply to lot lines, but I'm trying to see what feedback we could give you. If it does apply to lot lines, what's the limit on the side of the house? Combine those lot lines. What's the limit on the size of that house? Is it close to represent? Is it 4,000 square feet? What is it? So we don't encourage, or at least, I don't even know where we stand on that. Do we want to see 2 4,000 square foot houses jammed in there? Once they change the lot lines. God, that's an unintended consequence, isn't it?
Can you build a 4,000 square foot house on 25?
No,
No,
I don't,
it depends on the lot size.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, if it's 100 foot deep, you could build about 3,500.
you could build 1, 4 or 2 3s.
Yeah, you can build 2 3s, easy. So that's an easier example. So do we want to see 2 3s or do we want to see something that's 4,000 square feet on a bigger lot with all this open space around it?
Well, it depends, you know, in 30 parts of town, it's, you know, house after house after house after house. It's not, you know, one house sitting all by itself. I mean, there's several on Columbia that are huge lots that these. From the turn of the century, the big brick house down there, it's a giant lot sits by itself. But most of the town is these narrow lots with individual homes on them. And I don't think you want to see, boom, here's a big house with a lot of land around it. And that, in that context.
What do you guys think? What do you want to see when you drive down the street?
I mean, I'm kind of right there with Bob on this too.
Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, it's just, it depends on the lot.
It
That's what
definitely
Matt-
depends on the
5 foot
lot.
lots, somebody owns 2 vacant lots of 25 feet by 117. They should not be able to vacate that lot.
Well, they can't. Spell 300 says they can't.
They can't.
and they can't, under this language, or the previous language either, unless they go through a PUD.
Right.
Okay.
Well, you got the first part, and I think you could communicate, there's some uncertainty and or. Hate to say more study, but I think. Or looking at different examples on a map. Before we even say it should be close and represent, or it should be 4,000 square foot maximum above ground. We'd like to see more examples. Because otherwise we.
I mean, if the home's like falling apart, can you not demo it and just leave it as open space?
Yeah, I mean, that's, if you look at the language, the paragraph above, that's the exemption. If you
If you restrict it though.
restrict it, deed restricted for open space.
Right, but we're real firm on the 6 to 1. We're gonna squawk.
This is how these conversations always, they turn into hypothetical
Well, there's so
cases.
many.
There's so many, but what if the Samoville Valley Corp building, just as an example of a big building on a big lot, burned down or something? No, I don't,
Yeah.
I'm not picking, just a big building on
Yeah.
a big lot.
4 lots there.
So under this, they couldn't subdivide those. They'd have to build back the building that was already there.
Closely represented.
But that's not a
Are you
demo.
talking about a one or a 2 family resident? I mean,
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's what it's called.
Okay.
It's not a condo.
I'm just-
But it's unintended demolition. The fire and. then-
Wow, that's a bad example. Don't. Yeah, that's because it's not.
Purposely down.
so
Okay,
I think I have a clear understanding. I'll present it to P and Z as
we're uncertain on.
as a major issue for
Sure we
HARC.
do.
Yeah.
All right,
So the other tool is to look at providing maximums on zoning lot sizes. Right now, we don't have maximums except in the accommodations one, which limits it to 5,875 square feet. P and Z looked at this, and their suggestion is that we provide for a maximum of 6,250 feet. Now, if we did that, looking at the hillside transitional and the residential zone, of course, there's a 4,000 square foot maximum. That could go up to a 8,596 square feet lot, which is not really typical, but if we imposed a maximum of 6,250, then the maximum floor area would decrease to 2,968 square feet. With the bonus for affordable housing, that would go up to 3,368 square feet. So by increasing the maximum square footage of a lot, you're also reducing the maximum floor area, or you're having the effect. Now, if there's a non-conforming lot, then we would continue to apply the formula, which would allow it to go up to 4,000 square feet, but it would only be for non-conforming lots.
Non-conforming bigger lots.
Bigger lots, exactly. This would also apply to the if we imposed a maximum of 6,250 square feet, it really wouldn't affect the maximum floor area for an accessory building. Would still be a maximum 950 square feet. So you're meeting that maximum with a 6,000 square foot lot. Historic residential, same thing. 4,000 square feet maximum floor area would require 10,685 square foot lot, which is pretty rare. If we imposed a 6,250 square foot maximum, that would reduce it down to 2,918 square feet. With a bonus, that would be 3,318.
Can I ask a question? How long has the maximum 4,000 square feet been in the land use code? Does anyone know roughly?
That's a good question. I've tried to determine that.
more
And
than
it goes
10
way,
years, I can tell you.
it goes way back. I know that, but I don't have a specific date.
So we just kind of went through this, that we reduced that one renegade RC district from 7,000 to 4,000. I thought that was a good thing. But now we're going to take the 4,000 and reduce it further.
No, we're not.
Well-
Let me get to that.
Oh, okay.
So the accommodations one, we're recommending that there really be no changes, because that sets a 5,875 square foot maximum. In the residential commercial, same thing, we've imposed the 4,000 square foot maximum, so we're recommending no changes as far as providing a maximum lot size in the RC zone. So I think we're addressing your question. Are there any comments or issues with this?
Go back to the very first slide. Just before the tables. Just gonna wrap my head around. And this doesn't apply to hillside, just the hillside transitional. Huh?
Hillside transition. Doesn't apply to the hillside developing one or two.
Okay, so let's take that 4,000 square feet now that you get 2,600. And no, if you have an EDU. But now you
2968 without an ADU, bonus is 3368. Yeah, right.
well, that's on the 6,000. house, right? Yeah. I mean, we're looking at this as a bonus, we're taking it away, and then if you add EDU, then you can get back to
Well, that's
300 more feet.
that's based on our current code. We provide a
Oh, right.
400 square foot bonus.
Where would all the architects here? I'm not one.
I think.
Also, so I'm not practicing, I like the idea, those are smaller.
We'd still have the language in there about the 4,000 because there's some situations where there might be larger lots.
But you can't get to it in some areas. Maybe I misunderstood that unless you have an affordable housing now, and with this caveat, right?
Well, I mean, that's true right now. I mean, we have a 400 square foot bonus. Although it can't go above the 4,000.
Okay, well, so what are we gonna tell? We're okay?
Sorry, I'm stuck way back. I apologize. Maybe I'm getting tired or something, but I'm stuck back at the beginning of the conversation. So we're gonna limit lot area, reduce the limit, reduce the maximum size. How are we, if there's an 8,000 square foot lot out there, we're just gonna take,
If there's an 8,000 square foot lot out there, then it'd be considered non-conforming, but you could still develop on it, but we'd apply the same formula, so it could go up to or it probably wouldn't reach the 4,000, but close to 4,000.
if you had an 8,000 square foot lot, it was existed as and you wanted to build 4,000 square foot house, but now you can only build a 2,968 square foot house.
Because it's on a 6,250.
Because, well, you're gonna, the lot, we're not making the lot smaller. We're just gonna say you only get credit for 6,250 feet of your 8,000 square foot lot. Is that what we're saying?
We're saying you can only plat. You can't plat anything larger than the 6,250 square foot lot.
But the 8,000 square foot lot is already platted.
And that's what we would consider non-conforming.
Okay, but we're not setting a cap on the maximum calculation.
No.
So if you have 8,000, you're not forced to cap out at your calculation at 6,250.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay, so in what instance could someone combine lots to get to 8,596?
Through a PUD, based on our language.
But ballot 300 already eliminates the
Ballot
possibility.
300 would allow you to do it through the
Housekeeping.
process of extraordinary.
If you were fortunate enough to have, I mean, now all of a sudden, a house sitting on a lot line is gold. I mean, it was before too, but anyway. Okay, I'm just.
So we're okay with this?
We're not clawing back from lots that are already
Right.
large.
Kind of grandfather. Okay.
Sorry, that's where I thought we were.
I mean, this is language above ballot 300. I mean, with that, but I think it reflects the intent of.
So I guess we're good with this.
Okay. The final suggestion is we limit the size of additions. The original language, we required that any addition, a single family residence, not including the basements, may not exceed the floor area or the building heights of the existing building, including basements, except through the PUD process. Now, this is pretty radical. P&Z looked at this language and they would like to hear HARC's input, but they also had a recommendation that we really not include this as a part of this, that we look at it further through maybe the comprehensive plan process, looking at sub areas or distinct areas. But P&Z would like to hear your.
But it won't be included now.
Does this mean you, to do an addition, you have to go through the PUD? Is this what this?
If it exceeds that criteria.
So if you have a
If you-
900 square foot house on a regular lot, you could build. This, you could only build 1,800 square feet.
Yeah. Or,
Additionally,
Oh.
900 square feet, and it couldn't be any bigger, any higher.
No, I agree, it needs more study. I think there's a lot of what ifs here.
Yeah.
But if they're not gonna take it to council, then we don't need to spend time on it.
Well,
but they would like to hear your input.
No.
I think there's more straightforward ways to combat mass and scale. Right?
Well, subordinate, be subordinate.
Well, guidelines wise, but we rewrote the land use code. We increased setbacks, we reduced mass and scale. I mean, there are other tools we've already employed. We could just employ those again. This seems like a,
And I think what you're saying reflects some of the issues that were raised by P and Z as well.
that's probably because I was on P and Z.
I don't know. I think we have the tools in our toolbox now to do this. We're not gonna, whether it's heights. I mean, we've had this conversation at no
Well, although
square footage.
building height, maybe if it's a 1-story building and you're allowed to build up to 24 feet, you could have a 2-story addition.
But you'd have to go through the PUD.
You did this.
If you did this.
Yeah.
I don't like it.
I don't like it.
I think we can control this without it,
Okay, I think that's all.
but I don't know.
It seems like we're adding complexity
I
to
know.
question 300 instead of clarifying.
Well, I think that's why I tried to explain the whereas language, because the overall intent of the ballot measure, but I hear what you're saying.
I thought this would be the easy part. I thought it was just some language changes and
After we get into
getting rid of duplicity and all that stuff.
You rubber stamped it like I suggested. We have been out here an hour ago.
Understand.
I want to stay till 10.
All right,
Keep talking about it.
now for the difficult,
Longest thing.
now
Thanks,
for the
Ron.
difficult part. John is gonna make it easy. Thank you, Ron.
It's still light outside and my goal is to be home before it's dark.
Oh, longest day of the year. Well, you're in luck. Next week you can't, or next month you can't say that.
Would you like to introduce this item, Chairperson?
Oh,
Campbell?
well, yes. Our last work session item on land use code amendments is a work session to discuss potential amendments. Pardon me, to the land use code pertaining to new construction on lots with a pre-construction grade of 25% or greater in the residential type zone districts, new construction with below grade site coverage in the residential type zone district, and a new construction which includes 2 or more levels below grade in the residential zone districts for land use code 5208C. Jonna.
Thank you.
Here goes another one of my projects.
Nobody would know if you didn't mess up.
Who is that?
I'm not naming names or addresses. So this is a continuation of the work session we had last month on basements. This is a different project than I showed last time, but just to kind of give you a summary again of where we're at in the process, there were 6 items that were listed in this temporary suspension that council passed on March 28th. The PUD amendment and the residential commercial zoning amendment have been approved by town council, so those are law. The ballot question 300 number 2 we just went through with Ron, so I'm going to focus on 4, 5, and 6, which have to do pretty much with basements and development on hillsides. So I know we kind of went into this exercise without understanding why. Didn't have clear direction or clear goals stated, but these are the goals that I have gleaned from my conversations with you and P&Z. And I believe that they are to eliminate double basements, to simplify the rules for the bonus site coverage, to align the HARC application scale with floor area, to reduce the visual impact of 3 and 4 story structures on the hillsides, to retain the look and feel of Telluride's traditional mass and scale on the hillsides, and to limit the environmental impacts of demolition and new construction. I don't think HARC talked about that last one specifically, but P&Z talked a lot about it, and I'm going to give them this work session tomorrow as well. So I'm going to go through each of these goals and how we are proposing to address them. The first goal was to eliminate double basements. This had to do with suspension item number 6 specifically. And we have broken this down into 2 types of lots. So less steep lots, which I don't know yet, we could call them less steep or gradual or gentle or flat lots. You get the idea. Happy to have your feedback on that. But we're considering less steep lots as those of a slope with a slope of less than 25%. And so the recommendation is that we prohibit more than 1 floor below finished grade on these flatter lots. Is this in keeping with what we had discussed last time, as far as you're concerned?
Yes. But can I ask a question?
Yes.
25%. How and where is that measured? Yeah. 25%.
Of the site coverage.
Anywhere on the lot?
Of the site coverage.
Of the site coverage of
Yes.
the proposed
Yes.
site coverage.
Yes.
From A to B.
Yes.
So it could be steep here, you're gonna
Yeah.
build here,
Yep.
and it doesn't.
That's
apply.
how our land use code addresses it now.
Okay.
So, okay, so I'm hearing no double basements on less steep lots. So then on steep lots, which would be with a lot with a slope of 25% or greater of the site coverage. The way we are thinking that we can address this is that these structures would not be allowed any levels that are below the post-construction grade low point. That means in this example, where we had a basement, a sub-basement proposed, we've gone at this a couple of different directions, and I'd like your feedback on this because it seems any other way of describing this area is running into some difficulties. So when we look at the post-construction grade low point, that's typically going to be probably at the garage, the floor of the garage. So by identifying that point specifically, we would prohibit basements below that, given that everything above it is also a basement.
We good with that?
What about a lot or, sorry, a property where the driveway, the access of the public road is lower? Is there a way to tie that also to access points?
We did talk about that. So, I mean, it feels like it's an entry level, but it might not be. If there's no garage, for example, or if you have a garage elevator.
Or if you've got a distance between, say, the road and lot line, and then your art is sudden 8 feet or 10 feet above the driveway when your property starts, then that your post-construction grade is higher. So how do you even get into the property? I can think of one example that I won't mention that I think would, and it might just be a couple of examples where this wouldn't work. Because you can't obviously just take a 1-to-1 driveway slope up to a garage level.
How does that relate to the post-construction grade? low
Because
point?
if the road's down here and your property line starts once grade's already gone up, then your post-construction grade, your low point is, say, is 2 feet or 8 feet above where the driveway could come in.
But your post-construction grade low point isn't your driveway, it's your
Sorry, I'm
garage.
thinking of pre-construction grade.
Yeah.
Okay, never mind.
You good? Good with this? Okay, unanimous.
Everybody, you guys good? Tracking, does this make sense? Okay, cool. Okay, next goal. Our next goal is to simplify the rules for bonus site coverage. This had to do with suspension item number 5. We took the existing language and we are proposing that we remove the rule about, well, typically using bonus site coverage, it has to be 100% below grade, except that if you want to put it under a porch or deck, it can extend 18 inches above grade. We think we should eliminate this. It causes confusion. We've had situations where we've allowed it to extend above grade below porch, but then there are windows added. It's confusing and it is not necessary. Everything that takes advantage of bonus site coverage should be 100% below grade. Good. The next issue was number 3, the site coverage increase area may not include elements visible from the exterior, such as light wells, egress wells, or egress stairs. That was just redundant language that referred back to criteria 2, so we're eliminating that. Number 4 was the gross site coverage increase may not exceed 10% of the lot area up to a maximum of 525 square feet. There's no change there. It's just saying that you get 10% of the lot area not to exceed 525 square feet. Number 5 is the site coverage increase area may not be located less than 3 feet from the side yard property line. It used to be, we're proposing that's all property lines, no more than 3 feet from the property line. No less than 3 feet from the property line, sorry. Number 6 was used to say that should the site coverage increase area be applied to more than one level below grade, that it would count separately. We're proposing that the site coverage increase area should not be applied to more than one level below grade, given the restrictions that we're now placing on double basements and other spaces below grade. He's glaring at me.
Still be a problem on a hillside lot though, because all that's forcing you to do is go 525 square feet into the hillside instead of 275 and 275. Like, I
Two
think being
pieces.
able to apply that to 2 levels, legitimate below grade levels on a steeply sloped lot is more sensitive
Okay,
than forcing the whole 525 on.
so this one we need to distinguish between
Yeah.
steeper lots and less steeper lots.
I mean, I get it, trying to figure out increase area on 2 levels is hard. And representing it diagrammatically is also hard. Keeping track of it and not exceeding it is hard.
And it doesn't say you have to use the.
No, I know,
amount you're
you want to, but that's an expectation clients come to the table with generally.
So this is all below grade.
Has to be 100% below
Yeah,
grade.
I get it. Have to read that little words. I
Maybe
got
if you moved up closer.
it. Yes,
Or
I got it.
bring the screen this
Just
way.
takes, I had to read the whole
Don't
thing.
move it.
Oh. Do not move this. So, so where are we on the language of maybe it could be in 2 sections versus 1? I mean, I don't know.
Well, we're distinguishing between steep lots and less steep lots in other sections. If that's important, then we can do that here.
Okay.
I don't think we need to distinguish because on a lot that's not greater than 25%, you can't have 2 by definition, by the new definition. We eliminated sub-basements on
Mhm.
lots less than.
Yeah.
So you can't have increase area on 2 levels because you can't have 2 levels.
Okay.
So I think it's redundant.
I think I can think of a couple examples on lots, maybe like with a 20% slope where this might still work with 2 levels.
Okay.
So just to keep.
So are you saying distinguish
Change it to
between
20.
steep
I'm
and
saying,
not?
Stacy's saying it's not possible. I do think it's possible. So if it's, if there does need to be, if it does need to be distinguished, it should be.
Well, it almost takes us back then to our discuss two items ago, or how many ever. We just said that if your lot is less than 25%, you can't have a sub basement.
It wasn't a sub basement though, but it like the slope of the lot towards the back, there was enough space to do a double two-story site coverage bonus.
Yeah. Lots of things are possible.
Okay, let us,
I'm not even gonna start talking about half levels.
let us, figure that out. And
Okay.
well, I mean, next time we're gonna come back to you with language anyway, but. Yes, thank you for pointing that out. Number 7, we added, which says the site coverage increase area shall not affect the height of the building. Right now it does. Because it's 100% below grade, it shouldn't affect the calculation of the height. This is on hillside lots.
Great.
Simpler to figure. Okay, great. Goal, here we're talking about, the steeper slopes on lots with a 25% greater. Yep, site coverage. So the next goal was to align the HARC scale with floor area. When we did our previous land use code amendments, adjusting some of our HARC application scales, many of these hillside lots became insubstantial scale applications because of the way we calculate floor area. And this came out of our last work session. And what we're proposing is that any new construction of principal structures, so primary structure house, will automatically be a small scale HARC application and require full HARC board review, regardless of its floor area. Because we know it's gonna be, you know, it may be 900 square feet above grade, but it's actually 4,000 square feet.
That sounds like a good
Okay.
solution.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do they
So
all
this is
go
a
to-
little step backwards, but if it's a primary structure, we're not talking about accessory structures, but if it's a primary structure, new construction on a hillside lot with a grade of more than 25%, it's small scale.
Okay, so none to staff, none to the chair,
Nope.
just all to the board. It's fine. We're not very busy.
Where you're gonna be here kind of late tonight.
Nope, we're getting.
What's late?
That sounds like sounds like a good.
So this is
Okay.
a slight step backwards from where we are, but not near where we were
Don't
before.
use the word backwards. Let's just say recalibrating.
Got it.
That sounds best.
Okay, so the next goal was to reduce visual impacts of 3- and 4-story structures on the hillside. So we talked about reducing the parallel slope. In some zone districts, the parallel slope is a maximum of 30 feet from grade. In hillside developing 2, it's 31 feet. I don't know why it's different, but I want to show you some analysis I did on maximum heights in these different zone districts. So in hillside transitional, on all lots, which is the bright green, and then in the residential and historic residential zone districts, only on lots of, on slopes of 15% or more of the site coverage. It's a 30-foot maximum parallel slope. And what I found is that in these zone districts, hillside transitional, residential, and historic residential, they are mostly near the maximum parallel slope for their height. However, in hillside hillside developing 2, which is the pink area, and primarily Primrose Extension, it's a 31-foot maximum parallel slope, and they are being submitted way under their maximum parallel slope height, way under.
Okay.
Now, the difference, I think, is the size and the depth of the lots. I think in hillside developing 2, there's more opportunity to step back with the hillside. The lots in hillside transitional and residential are probably less deep. There's maybe a little bit steeper, and so all the mass is kind of forward and out up above the grade. So I guess my question to you is, do you want to pursue reducing the parallel slope in any of these zone districts? I could see we could easily do it in hillside developing 2, because no one's getting close to it. However, in these others, I mean, you could consider reducing it. It may have unintended consequences like lowering roof slopes. Or being pushed more into the hillside. I don't know. I mean, you guys would know better than I, but interesting. Not what I expected.
Yeah. Thanks
A
thanks.
lot of the ones, projects that came through on that developing hillside too. We saw it, that they were not even close.
Right.
That line is.
Yeah.
10, 15 feet above.
Oh, there's lots narrower. There's still 25-foot lots, aren't they?
I think they're wider
They're wider.
in hillside developing 2. They're bigger lots.
Like in the pink area.
Yeah.
Is that like one lot depth from the bottom to the top? Is that-
Well,
is that
this
two?
map, it isn't showing the accurate subdivision of these lots.
Can you blow that up?
It's not gonna show you the accurate size of the lots.
No, it's okay, but I'm just wondering, I'm looking at the length of it. Is that one lot from?
I think it's because whoever designed the pink lots didn't try hard.
Two separate lots.
I don't know. I mean, we already had one of these. Hey, you know what? That one that we told them to go to the back line that started this whole discussion. 5-story, whatever. I wonder what do you remember what that height was using the parallel
Talk
stop?
about it. It's gonna come back.
It
Oh,
was a work session.
Yeah.
It was,
He wasn't.
Did it exceed the 31 feet?
no,
No.
it
Yeah,
was
it did.
it was at the
So
maximum.
this is what's shocking to me, that they
Yeah.
were so low and.
But it was in the residential zone district, so it was at about
All right.
30. The
But see,
max.
we didn't need to modify it to adjudicate that with accordance to the guidelines. We said end of the line, and we thought we had support from the guidelines to do it, but I don't know, this hillside. I'm trying to think what circumstance that could get scary if somebody I mean, what would that look like if it was 31 feet on hillside developing? I mean, 20, I don't, Tomboy Road 27 feet. I don't know which one that was. Was that the Dan's
Which one?
20, the last one down there?
Yes, that was Dan Houlihan.
Yeah, we remember that.
And that was on the downhill side of the road,
Yeah,
which makes a difference.
I mean, that's almost 4 feet under the, I mean, it could lead to an argument that you lower that one, maybe. I don't know, but I'm always thinking of what Matt said, what are the unintended consequences? Could there be? I mean, I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, if you do lower it and someone butts up against that, they're just gonna wanna go more up the hillside, which is the opposite intention.
More up and more in.
There's maybe I don't wanna derail this, but I feel like developing these lots in the steep hillside don't really fit within design guidelines of doing more. Okay, if you're gonna get there.
She's got us.
Got a surprise ending.
Okay.
Do you want to circle back to this, or do you want to
I
talk
think we
about
can
this some more?
finish and just think about this after you hear what she's got in store.
Okay,
What do you think? Do you think that would be helpful? To
I
lower
think
the
it would be-
parallel slope?
do we need to change it because it's not, no one's getting near it?
Well,
But do we, since the precedent's been set by these others that have already been approved, would it make it easier to change it now so that any new applications are consistent with what we've seen? I don't know.
Well, I just want to be clear, each one of these projects received a HARC approval.
Yes,
So projects are approvable at 30 feet.
Every one of them.
So unless there's a reason why they should have only been approved at 28 feet or 27 feet or 26 feet.
I was just suggesting the ones in pink or only the hillside developing because we were
I-
so far. below.
I want to look at that a little harder. It's only really the two projects, right? 845 and 875 that are at the 16-foot number.
Yeah, and yeah, I think the thing is that if you're coming off of Tomboy Road, you're driving, your car's coming off there. You're probably gonna have a garage at that level. And you need, certain height to build a garage. It needs to be 27 feet. But you're gonna be above top of the hill. And you're gonna go down. These other projects, I believe you're coming in, you're driving in at the bottom and building up the hill. And so it's generally gonna be less than the top of the hill.
I think there's just fundamental differences between Primrose and the way it went through that PUD process and Curtis, for instance, and Gregory, which were in place prior. And I don't know this for sure, but I think those Primrose aren't they a lot steeper than Curtis?
I think they're steeper but deeper.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot more room to go back
A
up
lot
the
room to
hillside.
step
There's,
up.
the lots on Curtis are quite shallow.
And it forces you out of the ground.
Yes.
So see, I think there's just intrinsic differences.
Let's hear what John has
Yeah.
to say and come back to it.
Okay. So the next goal was to retain the look and feel of Telluride's traditional mass and scale on the hillside. We are recommending that instead of changing dimensional limitations in different zone districts, since we cannot seem to find the formula, that we add a new section to the design guidelines in the special standards, probably calling it steep lots, to address these concerns of stepping back up the hillside, the facade width on larger, wider lots, and even regrading the hillside or restoring the natural slope, which we've been struggling with quite a bit lately on some of these recent projects. Now, we do have treatment areas addressing these hillside areas. Transitional hillside, which is this mint green, and developing hillside, which is this kind of other green. However, we do have this section of the guidelines that's called special standards that contain the alley shed and secondary structure standards, exterior and site lighting standards and signs, and these special standards apply to all treatment areas everywhere in town. So it's not defined just by treatment area. So that if there's a steep lot we come across in the residential treatment area or historic residential treatment area or east-west Telluride, we can apply these new standards to address maybe more specifically or a little more stringently these concerns that we've been struggling with. It's the stepping up the hillside, number of stories, overall height or consistency with the neighborhood. Language that we see in these other treatment areas, but that are specific to steep lots. What do you think about that?
Adding an older section.
It would be like a subsection under special standards that just apply to lots that are over 25% grade.
Seems like that'd be simpler than trying to modify all these other.
Yes.
So I don't know what you're gonna propose, but I imagine that some of these special standards might sort of override some of the other directives or guidelines.
Yeah.
I think that.
They would trump the.
Yeah.
They would apply on top of the treatment area guidelines.
But I wonder what they are.
I wonder, we haven't determined what they are.
Is that what we're gonna sit down and do?
I'm not writing guidelines until
Yeah,
it's green light from you guys to go in this direction. Does
I
this
wasn't even gonna be here till 10.
Or not.
Does this sound like a general direction you all would be supportive of going?
I think so, because I think some of these projects just don't fit into the mold.
Yeah.
And we struggle with them because they're trying to conform with the topography and the hillside and access.
Yeah.
But they're just conflicting with all the other guidelines that are built around more flat lots.
So could one of them be that? And that's the thing, you gotta look at each site, but could that the 4-story shall be significantly set back?
Yes.
Because right now it doesn't say it. However, we already think, I think, that it should be anyway.
Yes.
So, but now you're giving us some tools or enhancing.
We can write more specific language to address those situations.
But I'm trying to think, what else would we say? Because I'm thinking of all these that I don't know what else it would be. It's bothered me. It's bothered you.
Well, I think she's already outlined
Well, we're talking about the widths.
Yeah.
Of facades and things like that.
revegetation.
Okay. Okay, never mind.
Grading.
I don't think it's gonna be a
Stepping
huge
up the
section.
It doesn't need to be 30 items or 30 policies. It could be 5 or 6 that just, that automatically are applied to these steep lots.
So I can see 5 or 6 of these. So, okay, we're good. We're good. This is really creative. This is good. This is an Donna, this is an all-star moment.
Okay, one more.
Really?
One more,
Going
one more
forward?
goal. And as I mentioned, this seemed less talked about or not talked about at HARC. This was more of a concern at P and Z. They have expressed concern about the environmental impacts of demolition and new construction or new construction of these very large structures. And new construction below grade, the amount of concrete, the embodied energy, and all of the material and the construction itself. So P and Z wanted to kind of incorporate language into these amendments. However, we have a newly adopted climate action plan that talks about all of those things. And we have hired Zoe Denal, our assistant town manager, to address the climate action plan specifically. That's kind of number 1 on her to-do list. So the things that will likely be coming up would be to, require contractors to use sustainable products. We might require use of electric equipment. We might revise our green building code. We might require deconstruction of structures rather than demolition of structures so that those materials don't end up in the landfill. So these are all ideas on how to address those concerns. These would not be part of this batch of land use code amendments.
I think that's where they belong.
Would this land in basically the green building code? Is that effectively, or
I
is
think
it
it
two
would-
competing?
This is
documents?
kind of a subset.
It would be, I think, partly in the green building code and partly standalone ordinances, I'm guessing. But probably not so much in the land use code because this has all been through a pretty rigorous process of our climate action plan, and it is all addressed in that.
These issues, which are very important.
Yeah,
But it's not a HARC issue.
it's not a HARC issue, but it doesn't seem to be a land use code issue with this batch of amendments that we're doing right now.
Seems like a.
It seems like a green building code.
But reference this possibly somewhere in the new design guideline. Note that this so that a new person looking at it would be aware of it.
It's somewhere.
Because I think that we have, if I remember correctly, when I wrote this thing years ago, there's a list of all related
Yes,
codes and things. that
Right.
Could be added to that.
yes.
Developer checklist or contractor checklist.
Okay, so leave it outside the land use code.
I think leave it outside this, yes.
This batch.
This batch. And I agree, it is very important, and I think this is the direction that everyone knows we're going. But we don't have the support or the analysis to create a formula that would tell us what the embodied energy of a foundation is. We're not at that point. And so it would be very difficult to address that specifically right now without the data and the research.
Well, and it's gonna be
We
a
haven't.
can of
we haven't
worms,
done.
because there's embodied energy and structural members that aren't sufficient to the current building code. I mean,
Yes, but I mean, I also understand that there are always new materials coming out that are more sustainable or more efficient or less, you know,
Of people working on concrete.
exactly.
So, carbon, whatever that word is up there.
well, of course, but our historic windows are horrible when it comes to U values, but we're not throwing those in the trash can.
No, we are not.
No, you're not.
Does this sound acceptable to
Yes.
this board? That's it.
But
Yep.
Look at that.
This is
Still
it.
light out.
Hey, walk on.
Better run out.
I gotta say, John, I think everybody realizes, but the examples you've gone through of past projects to, in each of these sections to kind of validate and coming up with this creative subcategory. And I think this is really good.
Well, I have to say that staff has worked really hard on this together and
Well-
brainstorming and yes. So it was not me, it was a genuine group effort and we hope that this addresses those concerns that. No, it was not mainly John.
No, this is one of the best work products I've seen from,
So the plan is, we're going to do these work sessions at town council July 11th, make sure they're on board. And then, we would likely come back to you, where's my calendar? With the language, proposed language for a review and recommendation on July 19th, so that would be next.
19 meetings. And then we'll be done.
Well, yes, you will be done.
And then, but then now, because you're doing a work session question. So this is gonna slow council down, so they can't get this passed till August.
No, it's not slowing them down because HARC has to do the review and recommendation, P and Z has to do the review and recommendation, and then town council has to review it twice.
Right.
So it is not slowing them down.
Oh,
at
they're
all.
just in between us. And so,
Yes.
okay, I see. And again, they're helping us by giving us some more tool or giving us time to give more tools to help ourselves in adjudication. But will you share with them our sentiment that we think we recommend what staff has presented here, and we don't think there's more changes that they need to put on their HARC or whatever and do, I mean, if we
Yeah.
have consensus, I think it's important they know.
Absolutely, I will share that with them. I will also share HARC or P and Z's feedback from tomorrow night with them at the July 11th work session, but the goal is to tell them which direction we're heading and make sure they're
Okay.
supportive of it
And then
before we get too far down this road.
Two last questions. One, hillside developing, just circling back to that. Do you think there's some minor lowering of the bar of the height or not?
I think what they're proposing is gonna supersede that, so I don't think there's a need to do that.
Address it in the guidelines.
With the subcategory?
Yeah.
Okay. There you go for that.
Mhm.
So no change. I didn't know, I couldn't remember they were 30 and 31. It seems like they should have been the same. But I don't wonder why.
Hillside developing 2 is a PUD, the whole thing is pretty
Okay.
much a PUD and that was.
And then my last question is, has there been any dialogue with P and Z on their concern at one time? On all the, we talked about all the runoff down the hillside and then we've talked to civil engineers, several of us have, Stacy has. And I have that, no, with these new dry wells and stuff, the drainage is good. If it comes up with them, is that not something, that's not a place they were, because when this first meeting happened. They were
Well,
concerned.
that is still a concern of P and Z. Again, I don't think we have the analysis or data to prove that it is true or not. I mean, what I've heard from anecdotally from some of you who've talked to engineers that really it's improved because of the backfill and the gravel
Yeah.
that's placed around the foundations, that the drainage is actually better. That's what I'm hearing. I don't have anything
Well,
in
we-
black and white that illustrates
We
that.
should- Well, not time for tomorrow, but we should, if there's questions about it, if it's going different direction, then we should probably get a professional letter signed addressing it by a civil engineer. Because, okay, well, let's see where it goes.
We should take it out of the anecdotal realm.
Yes.
Is subsurface drainage an issue? Or not? Because and not to take it back to this isn't anecdotal, this is based on experience. So all the projects we've done, let's say north of Colorado Avenue, there is not water coming out of the soil.
And I've heard anecdotes to the contrary.
Okay, is this still being discussed like P and Z now, or is still one of their concerns?
I imagine it will come up tomorrow. Yeah.
Well, maybe somebody ought to, maybe we ought to make a
Maybe-
meeting. Okay,
Didn't we used to have these meetings on separate weeks? Oh, we do. No, tomorrow.
They moved theirs up because of. some
They wanted to go
conflict.
to Mountain. Oh, maybe that was last week.
It used
Some
to be
conflict.
Yeah, they. Can't remember why they did.
You want to do it last week?
Most months they are on opposite weeks. Yeah. Alternate weeks.
okay. Any other discussion? Okay, turn at 8:50 PM by unanimous. It was a good meeting.
Uh-huh.